Folks, welcome back to the Crossing Swords podcast presented by Batavia Downs Gaming and Hotel. And we have a very, very, very special draft extravaganza. Your Buffalo Sabres are picking number 9 possibly in this year's NHL draft. And speaking of extraordinary, speaking of special, my right-hand man, Bunty, how are you doing today? Just a few hours basically since we were last on here, breaking the JJ Purka news. How are you feeling tonight?
I'm feeling excited. Draft night is always a fun night, not quite as fun in hockey sometimes as football, but there's always the possibility of a trade. Bo Byrum, is he going to be a Buffalo Sabre in 3 or 4 hours? Who knows? We'll be talking about that. Will the Sabres make their pick at number 9? Also an unknown. So a lot to talk about tonight. And then there's also a big trade a couple nights ago that we talked about at midnight. So maybe for those that weren't awake at that point, we can discuss a little bit of that as well.
Yeah, we might as well just address that elephant in the room. JJ Purka officially traded from the Buffalo Sabres. We heard rumors, we heard some rumblings, some birds chirping. Is Purka going to be on the move? He was Frank Saravelli's number 1 trade choice from the trade deadline, basically. Here we are. And then crack of dawn, basically midnight, the trade becomes official. JJ Purka sent to Utah. Sabres bring back Michael Kesselring and Josh Stone. Bunty, we were talking for an hour and a half when that night broke. And that news broke. We had 12,000 people there with us when it happened. It was utter chaos. I think there was a lot of knee-jerk reactions. I think a lot of people were angry, I remember, in that moment.
Surprise.
As the days, crazy. Who could have thought of that? But as the kind of days have gone by, I've seen more and more positive reactions. I've seen a ton of Utah fans just talk so highly of these two players that we're going to love them. So maybe for the people that didn't hear or haven't seen your reactions, Bunty, what are your thoughts on the JJ Purka move just a couple days now?
Yeah, my initial reaction to the JJ Purka move was it was a little underwhelming. I wouldn't say it was extremely underwhelming, but it was a little bit. You hear Kesselring and Doan, and you have your expectations going in of guys like Dobson or Kyrou or Rossi, and you're like, I wish I had a little bit more, but it makes sense. And people will debate the whole, well, did they put themselves in a hole that they had to get a right-hand defenseman as part of this trade, and did they take somebody of lesser talent in order to fill a need versus getting the best possible result back in return? The way I look at it is this. I would have preferred them to play hardball with JJ Purka and keep him and bridge him, because I think this organization has become a pushover for a lot of their players, and whoever becomes discontent, you're out the door, and then you get your Stanley Cup somewhere else. I would prefer the Sabres could man up a little bit, but I also understand they don't want a 23-year-old who being a problem on or off the ice for them, and that maybe it was just time to move on, get something else in return that they know can help their team, especially someone that can partner with Owen Power or Rasmus Dahlin. So at the end of the day, Kesselring is a solid defenseman. He's been mostly a third pair, but he has metrics and numbers that suggest he probably can take on a second pair role. Yep. And then Doan is more of the type of player, like, let's be real. How many Sabres fans have watched Josh Doan play hockey? Probably not much. So you hear the guy's name, then the first thing you do, you look up his stats. You see like 19 points last year. You're like, oh, this guy's a nobody. Then you start looking into like the advanced metrics and everything. You realize, oh, this guy is second on Utah in basically some of the top metrics for expected goals for. He is a young player. He's the son of Coyotes legend Shane Doan, and he actually has some intriguing upside. Now, is he a second line player? No, but there was even some analysts that were talking about Josh Doan saying in time he could be a 40-point player. He could be a 45-point player. So I think after having some time to absorb everything, you look at the trade and you're like, you know what? The Sabres gave up one of their key players. They're getting a good player back and another guy who has the potential to grow. Is it risky? Yes. Was it everything they could have gotten? No. But that's why the rest of this offseason still has a big place in how I'm going to evaluate it. Do they trade Byrum? And if they do they get a forward back? If you get a good forward back for Byrum, then that kind of levels things off with the Purka trade. If you get someone in free agency, makes things a little bit easier to handle. So some people were giving me crap. They were saying, well, you have to just view each trade on its own. Well, we don't know what the Sabres are negotiating with other deals, other players, and other situations. So they have the full story. Now, if a week from now that ends up being the trade and the Sabres get no top six forwards through trade or free agency, I'm going to look at it and be like, yeah, maybe you should have had a different approach to this. But we don't know the full picture.
Yeah, and speaking of knowing the full picture, our full picture basically here right now, intern Vinny Cristiano, how are you doing tonight? Big Sabres draft day ahead. How are you feeling right now? You know, Purka news just happened. I'm sorry about your jersey, but how are you feeling after that, kind of going into draft night tonight?
Yeah, you actually reminded me. I meant to bring it and wear it today, and I totally forgot as I was leaving the house. So I apologize for already starting things off on a bad note. But hopefully the Sabres do not let everyone down like I've let myself down here by forgetting my JJ Purka jersey. But in all seriousness, it's a weird day, right? I think that when you look at how this week has played out, I don't know if you polled Sabres fans on Sunday afternoon that they would have said that we would go into today with as many deals as having happened, not only with the Sabres, but also across the NHL. I mean, we just had an extension for Sam Bennett with a couple of minutes ago. We had, a trade with Noah Dobson and the Canadiens between the Islanders within the last 24 hours, right? And then, of course, that Purka deal earlier this week, more Sabres related. That's a lot of stuff going on, which is cool because I feel like in years past there haven't been as many instances of action on draft week as there has been this week. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but the recency bias right now lets me know that it seems like there's some stuff going on, which I'm excited about, and we'll see if the Sabres have anything up their sleeve, because right now, I was kind of surprised to see that they dealt Purka as early as they did. And that might mean they have more cooking.
Exactly. I think if, you told us last week that only one move was going to be done, I think most of us would have assumed it had been Byrum on the move first. At least that's what my impression was, that was basically the one that was set in stone. But that didn't happen. Purka's on the move. Josh, good to see you after, our long hour and a half the other night. In terms of like Purka off-ice stuff, I'm just going to say, we're not there. We don't know. These are things we're hearing online and not our position, at least not mine to talk about because I'm not there. But if there are issues, I think we've seen with Kevin Adams with this, management that they want guys to be in Buffalo to, be the ones to break this playoff drought. So we'll see what happens. Josh, I'm at the point in my Sabres jersey, and I'm proud to rock every dumped player. Nothing says I've been through it like my reverse retro Taylor Hall. That was probably a great jersey to get back then. But gentlemen, we talked, the Purka news. The biggest news from today, which came out of left field, it felt like, Jack Quinn has been re-signed by the Sabres, a 2-year deal with an AAV of 3.375. Vinny, if you want to get us going on Quinn, I saw, I feel like we've talked a lot about Quinn in the recent years of being on the show. What's it feel like to you to see Quinn back on this 2-year deal, and what do you want to see out of him this next year?
Well, I think the number one thing that I'll just take off the table right now as an answer is just a healthy season. We, of course, did not get that last year, and so that's the easy answer, but it's, to be honest with you, the real answer. because you can't really judge the production for the majority of last season on what he is as a player. It is odd. It's a weird feeling right now to maybe think back to the Sabres fan of me 3 years ago and be like, hey, you see this kids line that's super fun to watch? Only one of them is going to be in Buffalo by the time the 2025 NHL draft happens. And of those 3 players at that point, I would probably assume it's Dylan Cousins. And Cousins was the first one to go. Purka now, of course, goes this week, who of the 3 was probably my second favorite. And now, again, going back to that version of me that does not know the future, it's like, hey, by the way, 2 of these guys are going to leave, both by trade. One's going to get re-signed 3 days after the other one gets traded. What do you think is going to be the case? It's like, oh my God, I guess we trade Quinn and then we traded Cousins or Purka. That's crazy. It's actually the opposite. Quinn's the one getting re-signed. But I think that's an investment from this organization and seeing that clearly, even though he didn't produce last year, he's playing the style of game, or at least shows the potential of being able to play the style of game that they want to be able to play, despite him having an unhealthy year, not really being able to produce at the level they wanted on paper last year. So I want to see him healthy, and I do want to see him become the guy that produces points regularly, because right now we just lost a winger that did that.
Yeah, you know what's interesting about Jack Quinn? He went from the guy that we were probably unrealistically high on to the guy that we're now too low on overall. And it's funny how things happen like that. His rookie year, I believe he was around 37 points, 14 goals, and he was a -7, -8. Last year, he had 15 goals, 39 points, and a -18. So really, the Jack Quinn in his 2 close to full seasons healthy produced at basically the same level. The difference is he was 2 years younger as a rookie, and you expect growth. And I think that's the same thing that played into the Dylan Cousins versus JJ Purka comparisons too. Dylan Cousins, he peaks out early on in his career, gets the big money, doesn't live up to the contract, and then you're like, this guy's a disappointment. Well, he's still getting 47, 48 points. He's just not the 60 to 70 point guy you thought he was going to be. Well, JJ Purka goes from a second round pick, was probably the third in the pecking order out of those 3. Starts off with a slow start, then has an above average second year where he gets the 28 goals to 50 points, and then keeps ascending this year with the 27 goals and 68 points. So it looks like, JJ Purka is going to be a star while Cousins sucks. Well, when you really look at Purka versus Cousins overall the last 3 years, Cousins has had basically 2 50-point seasons and nearly a 70-point season. Cousins versus Purka really ain't that different overall. It's just that the order that the seasons have played out makes you think that Purka has this high-end potential and that Cousins doesn't. The other thing that is interesting when we talk about all 3 of these is Quinn had a major injury, as you noted, Vinny. That injury is going to have a recovery time, and you're not going to be the same player coming back from that as you were before that happened. So we even had a brief stint where Quinn played 27 games, not this past season, but the year before, where he had 19 points and didn't look that bad. So part of me is looking at Quinn as, I don't want to have to count on him being in my top 6. I'd rather him be like a third liner or something like that to start a season. But who's to say Jack Quinn can't score 20 goals for you? I think we've gotten to this point where, he should be a 30-goal scorer, to, oh my God, how is that guy even playing hockey for you? And yes, as he had immature moments, did he show up late to a practice in Minnesota, which led him to be a healthy scratch? Yeah, he's shown a lot of instances of immaturity, but so do a lot of 22, 23-year-old kids. And it was just a year ago where Sabres fans were loving Casey Middlestat at age 25, most of them that had hated Middlestat at age 22, 23, and 20 going into his 24 age season. So I still think there's something there. Did he get overpaid a little bit? Yeah, he got overpaid a little bit. Am I going to worry about it? No, because the Sabres haven't spent to the cap or within $5-6 million of the cap in forever. And what's really the difference between paying him $2 million and paying him $3.5 million? It's really not that much if they're not going to spend to the cap. So I am interested to see if Jack Quinn has a bounce back. I think this type of prove-it year is something that can bring out better results. Jack Quinn's not going to be wanting to make $3 million a year the rest of his career. He's going to want what JJ Purka got. He's going to want what Dylan Cousins got. And the one other thing I do want to say about Purka, quick, we don't know what necessarily led him to wanting out. Everybody speculates it's the product on the ice. I don't believe that was number one reason. Just being honest, it's easy to say it as disgruntled Sabres fans. I think he had issues with Lindy Ruff. Lindy Ruff publicly called him out on his defense. An older player that's more accountable probably shrugs it off and does something about it. Purka, going back to November, there was rumblings that he might not be long for the Buffalo Sabres. That's right around the 13-game losing streak period where he had one goal during that stretch and was playing horrible hockey early in the year. The other thing about Purka, everybody wants to say he's this 80-point guy going forward that's going to score 40 goals. Do you know what his shooting percentage was 5-on-5 this past year?
Tell us.
14.7%. Do you know how realistic that is, carrying that forward? Not at all. He's going to have to increase his shot load to keep scoring at the rate he's scoring. Because while he's always going to be a good player, I think Purka could be a 60-plus point player and he's going to be productive. But the people that think like he's going to be this 80 to 90-point player, he's going to have to change his entire game. Because number one, he doesn't play defense. So that in itself should limit some of your time on the ice. Like being the second percentile in the entire NHL for defense is awful. Maybe it was the fourth percentile. But then you look at his power play metrics. He was one of the worst power play players in the entire NHL last year. He was in the second percentile. So not only does he not play defense, he was horrendous on the power play. So what does J.J. Purka do really good then? He's good on the rush, and he has a great shot. Well, you're going to have to surround him with great playmakers in order to get that consistent production. This is a crazy thing because this goes more in the advanced metrics. Everybody talks about how Bo Byrum away from Dowling is nothing. Byrum only produces when he's with Dowling. Check out Purka's expected goals for with Tage Thompson versus when he's with anybody else on the Sabres. Because a guy like Zach Benson is consistently good in those numbers, regardless of who you pair him with. But you know who was actually better with Benson than Purka? Thompson. Thompson was better with Benson. Then you take Purka away from Thompson. Thompson was still good with a lot of other players. But Purka, without Thompson, was not the same player. Yeah. So what does that show you? Those type of metrics tell you, just like how Dowling elevates Byrum, but he's unable to elevate some of the lower players on the Sabres, Purka is elevated by Thompson and not elevating other players in other line combinations. So what I'll say about Purka, good player. He's going to score a lot of goals. I like his future, but I can understand the hesitancy to give him a long-term big money deal with some of these underlying things that are concerns, especially when they've been burned by Cousins and they've been burned by Samuelson and they've been burned by some of these other contracts they've given out. Now, I would have given him one, but you combine that with the Lindy Ruff stuff, and I'm not going to address the stuff off the ice. I don't know J.J. Purka personally.
Exactly.
But this wasn't the slam dunk that everybody thinks it is. And we act like Trevor Zegras, when he got traded to Philly, what was the return for him? Pretty weak.
Peanuts.
Zegras is a guy with 2 60-point seasons who is a top 15 pick, and fans around the league think is pretty good because of the highlights. You look at Purka, maybe the league thinks he's good, but maybe the league doesn't think he's as good as what we as fans think he is. Now, he got a good contract. He's going to be a good player, but I don't want to say he's going to be elite. I don't want to say that yet at this point of his career.
And he's probably going to be playing on that Utah top line. You can imagine they make that trade. They pay him that money. He's going to be playing with their big dogs there. I'm going to go through a couple more comments here. Josh, again, I'm a little glad he went to another franchise, clawing out of the bottom. It's tough watching guys want out and go to different places. But, I mean, I've kind of been on the page now of the Sabres all offseason. Our number one priority, at least in my opinion, was getting that D partner for Owen Power. They hit that goal. I know a lot of people were wishing, they would flip the ninth and the fourth. But at the end of the day, they got this. And I think, the more I see of Josh Doan and the more I hear from people who watched him all last season throughout his career is he's overachieved at every level he's been at. And he never really got those big opportunities with Utah. So I'm excited to see what he does here in Buffalo. Got a couple Instagram comments as well. Sabres 0.323. As long as it doesn't win the cup this year, I'm fine. Yeah, I would also not like to see that, just based on, my mentions can only handle so much hate at the moment. I can't do another one. And then on top of Jack Quinn, just talking about the strength and conditioning. Hopefully that helps. Kevin Adams talked about the new strength coach, talked a lot and talked very highly of this person during that. So we'll see what that brings as well. My final kind of thoughts on Jack Quinn real quick. We know he struggled with injury. He came back the last 13 games of the season. He had 13 points. He had that great stretch where he had like 9 points in 5 games, kind of slowed down a bit, but finished a point per game for the last 13 games. Hopefully he can build off this. And he's the one guy, I think you look at, mock lineups. He's the biggest question mark on, one, is he in the lineup? Where does he even fit? And where does he land on that? It's a big question mark. So we'll see what Lindy Ruff does. Now that they paid him over $3 million a year, he's going to be in that.
Let's talk about it. What do you think, Gatesy? What are your thoughts on where would you slot Jack Quinn? Because getting close to $3.5 million, he's on this team. He's going to play. So with his deficiencies, there's only so many spots you can put him. Where do you put him?
At this point, like in my mind, I have to put him on that. I want to say on that third line, but you look at, the way I envision the Sabres bottom 6, that's the thing I see the most solidified in a lot of things. So it's weird because his game doesn't fit that bottom 6, but the way he plays isn't good enough to be at the Sabres top 6, to be at that, where they should be point wise. So the ball's really in his court, what he's going to do. So he's on that 2-year bridge deal. I'm going to just wait in training camp. Obviously, we see what happens at the draft with Byrum, if he gets moved, dealt. But I think if the season started today and you had game 1 tonight instead of this draft, you would have to put him on that third line. Maybe that second, if you want to jumpstart him in some capacity, because you saw when he got those opportunities towards the end, he did start to shine. Couple more comments here. We got a lot. Yeah, Doan and McLeod from Jared. I like that. Can't be mad at this. Getting AC unit. Yeah, it is still pretty hot in here. Speaking of hot, gentlemen, we have some heat in the Trainwreck Sports Etsy store. Let me just pull this up real quick. Bouncing around. Here we go. Trainwreck Sports. Trainwreck Sabres hat, or Buffalo hockey hat. Sorry. Use code CSPOD at checkout for 10% off. Help all of us out here. That's code CSPOD at checkout. Now, gentlemen, we have Sabres have the 9th pick tonight. Pick number 9. I think a lot of people, maybe some people online, were hoping it'd be gone by this point. It hasn't been dealt. We are a couple minutes away from the start of the draft. It is 6:56 at the moment. Do you think the Sabres are going to trade pick number 9? And do you want them to? Vinny, if you want to get us going here.
I admit I do. I want them to. I think based on what I assume would be the best roster this season, I think I want them to move that pick to get a better player. And the reason I say that is mostly because for the past, let's say, 3 to 4 years now, we've gotten to a point, and maybe it's longer than that, but we've gotten to a point, I think, in this, maybe not this rebuild, but in the rebuild of the Sabres roster starting in 2014-15, you at one point were willing to say, all right, look, like we're going to draft these guys high in the draft. Some of these draft picks are going to be able to play in the NHL right away. And that has been the case for the last 14 years. For example, Benson played right away. Sam Reinhart didn't really play right away. Now, Sam Reinhart right now is a much better hockey player than Zach Benson, but Zach Benson's been in the league for significantly less amount of time. So this is not really a comparison of Zach Benson and Sam Reinhart. But my point is that some of the players you were drafting needed that time that you would invest in them to go and play in Rochester or play at the time in Cincinnati. and develop a 3-year system. Sometimes they remain in college. Other times it was just, juniors overseas, whatever that may be. Get onto your team when they were older, stronger, wiser, better at hockey, and then contribute. And you were willing to wait because of the investment in your future by taking these high draft picks. And that's not just a Sabres thing. That's how all sports works. The thought is you're bad at whatever sport you play, you draft early, that is better talent, and then your team becomes good when these guys develop.
Yep.
And that has just never really happened for the Sabres. And now it's to a point where that patience is almost non-existent anymore. So for me, it's like I want to see the team get immediately better. And so I'm no longer willing to invest in a player that might actually be better one day. Like the upside of this draft pick is astronomical. Like this player could end up here one day in the Hockey Hall of Fame. This player could also never play an NHL game in their entire life. But that risk reward is not worth taking for me anymore. If we can get a player that's already proven, hey, I can play in the NHL, I can contribute to an NHL team, and I can help an NHL team make the postseason. Because right now, that's all the Sabres need to do. Because we know what they've been doing, but their methods of trying to get to the postseason have not yet worked. And that method has mostly involved drafting and trying to develop. So maybe moving Purka, another one of those players that did get drafted by the Sabres and essentially developed, is an indication that they're also maybe moving away from that system that most teams try to work with when they are in that rebuild phase. So for me personally, I don't really need to see them make this pick today. I would prefer that they use this pick to add a roster player to make the team better come October, because I think the player that they may or may not draft today that may or may not play in Rochester in coming this season, I don't think that's actually helping us that much, because they're not going to be as good, you'd assume, as someone that we could get as an active NHLer at this point.
I think the loudest name I'm hearing now revolving that 9th pick in a trade is Brian Rust from the Pittsburgh Penguins. That's one of those top 6 names you can add in. Bunty, I know you had concerns about his age. He's 33 years old. I guess walk me through how you're feeling about this 9th pick. And if there is a trade involved, like what would you want to see out of it, and what hole do you want filled the most?
Yeah, honestly, if there was a way to move it and get something back that could make an immediate impact and contribute to your team, I'm all fine with getting it. Now, you might not get the traditional value back to where if the 9th overall pick turns into somebody great, you might be like, well, we got Brian Rust and we got 2 seasons of him producing 40 points, but did that 40 points get you closer to playoffs? Like if you end the drought, I think for the psyche of our fan base, if that guy had a Jason Zucker type contribution, you'd be like, oh my goodness, like absolutely I would take that right now if it meant even getting a wild card spot. But it's tough, because I even saw Chad DeDominicis mention this earlier. Well, if you swapped 9 in Hellenius for Russ, so like, yeah, you're getting the player now that can contribute, but say you did a pick swap and you got the Penguins first, but then you're giving up Hellenius, who might be a really good player one day. So you still have to balance the long term with the short term. The issue I have is I feel like the Sabres are in a spot where no matter what they do, they're going to be criticized a ton. If you get a guy like Brian Rust right now, who's 32 years old, who is on, I think he's 32, maybe he's 33. I don't
33.
know. 33.
Yeah.
You're going to, that's a lot to give up for a guy that might have 1, 2, maybe 3, if you're lucky, good years. And if you're able to keep him for that period of time, and he's still producing. But at the same point, like, what does this team need? This team needs talented veterans that will teach the youngsters how to play. Yeah, they moved on from a lot of them, but they still have a lot of young players that they need to create a proper culture for. And I think that's important. One thing I will say, Vinny, you talked about it earlier about how they moved on from Purka, and is that a sign that they're moving on from the youngsters and the way they're playing? Absolutely it was, but it wasn't the Purka move that gave that indication. It was the Dylan Cousins move. And I said when they traded Cousins that was the first step in changing the entire identity of the Buffalo Sabres. And some people were laughing at me, changing the identity. What do you mean? And what I said at that time was that was the first admittance by Kevin Adams that the youth movement wasn't working. Yeah. And that the kid line that we had invested 2.5 years at that point of them being the second line wasn't getting it done. So when you move on from Cousins, it makes it a little bit easier to move on from Purka. And Quinn, just his value is so low that at this point, like, what do? You're not going to get anything back. You might as well hope he has a little bit left in the tank. I'll say this about Purka too, to continue the youth thing. I don't think the Sabres disliked Purka, the player. Like, I truly believe if he didn't want out of Buffalo, they would have been fine bridging him and having him continue to play and contribute on their team. I think what the Sabres' problem was, they had too many guys that played a certain style of hockey and fit a certain prototype. And they looked at their youth, especially because the whole thought when Granato was around was, we need to be easy on these guys. We can't be hard. We need to develop them. We need to let them play freely, not within structure. Just let them be themselves. And that led to the 91-point season. But what happened the next year? Teams countered how they defended the Sabres because the Sabres could only score goals on the rush and be on the attack, play incredibly sloppy hockey. So what did we hear going into the next season from Granato? Well, we need to play a more sustainable brand of hockey. We need to play a brand of hockey that can lead to more consistency in winning. What's Granato saying there? Well, we need to be defensively more responsible. We have to be able to generate offense, but also be good on our own end of the ice. And what happened? Defensively, they did get a little bit better. Goaltending improved quite a bit, but they couldn't put the puck in the net. Ultimately, Granato gets fired as a result of that, and they bring in Lindy. What did they say before they brought in Lindy? We need accountability. We need to be able to hold ourselves to a certain standard. You know what I think is truly going on behind the walls of KeyBank Center? I think Lindy Ruff came in and thought guys like Purka, guys like Cousins, guys like Matthias Samuelsson, that they were young, talented, that they were these guys that were going to be part of the building blocks of the future. Mm-hmm. And he had 3-4 months with them, and he realized Cousins isn't a two-way player. He doesn't play defense. He was supposed to be that type of guy coming out, but he isn't playing defense. He looks at Purka and says, yeah, you can score goals, but then you also allow a lot of goals on the ice because of your defensive recklessness and your inability to do anything productive without the puck. He looks at Samuelsson, who he slapped an A on his chest, and says, you didn't even defend our top goal scorer when he gets laid out. I don't even care if you don't know what happened. You got to do something about it. I think Lindy basically went to management and during their conversations, it was like, these guys just aren't getting it. They don't know what they're doing, and they aren't going to know what they're doing. Basically, what I'm trying to conclude is, when the Sabres won with Lindy in the 90s, it wasn't that they had the most talented players, but they played responsible defensive hockey, and they did what they were supposed to do. You're up a goal with 2 minutes left. You find a way to close the game. You're up 2 goals in the second period. Instead of taking the risky play and turning it over, leading to an odd man rush, dump the puck in the corner and just accept that, okay, that you're going to kill another minute off the clock. My belief is that Lindy watched these guys play and said, there is no team mentality in this group.
Definitely. And I think we see
all for themselves, and that there is very little for the team. And my belief is that Lindy believes you could give him a bunch of B players that are 27, 28, but do what he wants and have better results than having 23, 24-year-old A-plus players that don't do anything that he wants. And that's what I think is happening now. I think they are constructing this team in a way to where they are going to have people that do what they are asked to do rather than look out for themselves.
Yeah, and I think we see that too just with the trade that happened for Purka. I mean, it just screams Lindy Ruff. You see, I think it was Beyond the Blue and Gold when, we see the coaches having some aspect in the trade talks. This, like Bunt said, screams Lindy Ruff. You bring in 2 guys who, all accounts have that edge to their game that I think a lot of fans have been missing. I think us especially. You talk about, Josh Stone. Everything I'm hearing from fans of Utah, he has that energy. He brings it every single game. He's overachieved everywhere he's been. He's also 23 years old. he can take that next step in his career. And I'd love to see him, on that third line of the Sabres and go from there. And then Kessering as well, another guy who I think can hopefully really exceed here in Buffalo, playing alongside Owen Power. He put up decent points as a big defenseman. He has the second hardest shot in the league behind Tage Thompson. So I think, the Sabres are just going to go with the game plan of we're going to shoot pucks through the goalies this year. And hopefully we can get to that next level. But Vinny, I think in terms of like a Sabres trade, there's like 3 prospect names that, are at the top of that list and are kind of in that same boat of, an Isak Rosén, Noah Ostlund, Konsta Helenius. If you had to give up one of these guys in a trade for that top 6 winger, who are you most comfortable with parting ways with?
That's a great question because I hate it. I hate that question so much. From watching them play, I admit that I don't really know what role I prefer keeping most of like the 3 of them. I will say this. Helenius, I really liked watching this year. I had a ton of fun watching Konsta Helenius play hockey. And the thing about his game right now is like he's like Rosén and Ostlund, for example, from like a year ago. He's raw, he's new, and he showed so many great flashes while also being able to play in that system. I think of the 3, I might have to, just to answer your question, not skirt around it. I think I would say I would be the least unwilling is the phrase I'll use, not most willing. I would be the least unwilling to move Ostlund, I think. What I saw from Rosén a couple times in Rochester was the ability to keep the puck on a string, which I really thought was impressive. Yeah. Even in the postseason, they got to the Calder Cup playoffs. There were shifts where Rosén was on the ice and he would skate through the entire team. And I can appreciate that maybe that level of finesse won't necessarily translate to the NHL. It's bigger, it's faster, it's stronger, and it's harder to keep the puck like that. Mm-hmm. But again, these guys are relatively recent draft picks that are just kind of getting their feet under them in Rochester right now. And I think Rosén's confidence with the puck will eventually translate to the NHL. I don't need him to be NHL ready yet. I don't need him to be a second line winger in the NHL yet. But I will say this. I definitely don't need Konsta Helenius to be there yet, but Rosén is showing dominance at the AHL level, which I like.
He's only 22 years old.
Yeah. Helenius is not showing dominance at the AHL level, but he's showing flashes of brilliance at the AHL level, and he's way younger. I think he's 19 still.
Yeah, last year's draft, so he'd be 19.
19?
I'll double check
Ostlund, yeah, please check my math on that. I love just being blatantly wrong about things. But
19, we're good.
Austin,
2006, that's crazy.
That is nuts. He's younger than my youngest sister, which is bonkers to me.
Draft class was born in 2007. That makes you feel any better.
At that point, like I had already known I wasn't going to make the NHL at when they were born. It's nuts. But I'll finish off with saying, like, I haven't seen enough examples of Ostlund being able to take over or like be as noticeable on the ice as Helenius and Rosén have been, and for that reason, I think I'm least unwilling to part with Ostlund. If that is the situation we have to do.
I'll be real. I don't really care. I know that's a stupid, like, ignorant thing to say. Like, I respect everything you just said, Vinny, and
that's very nice of you to say.
And I agree with a lot of the points you brought up. I just don't care about the prospect pool right now. You created this prospect pool so you have the ability to be flexible with your team and your assets to build a playoff team. Like, a lot of times, like, it's the transition of you build a good enough prospect pool, then you use that prospect pool to either take up open spots in the NHL or turn those prospects into better proven players in the NHL already. And the Sabres still stink, but they don't have the open spots. Like, where are these prospects going to go? So I look at it, and you already, let's be real, Kulik and Benson are 20 and 21, so they're basically already the age of most of your prospects. So why should I care about these kids right now? Because every moment I care about these kids, you know what I'm doing? I'm looking at, oh, what's the team going to look like when Tage Thompson isn't here because we sucked another year or two? Oh, who's taking over for Rasmus Dahlin? I'm tired of that. Like, that's part of the problem. Like, I know draft and develop. The Sabres have a talented roster. And right now you have one of the best goal scorers in the NHL. You have one of the best defensemen in the NHL. You have a number 1 overall pick defenseman who's young, who has the ability to turn into an elite defenseman. And then you have Alex Tuch, who's 29 years old, who is a 36 goal scorer. Like, you have the pieces to be a successful team right now.
Speaking of pieces to be a successful team, we have a new member joining us tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome AJ to Crossing Swords podcast. AJ, how you doing?
I am good. Vinny, nice meeting you. Gatesy, I've interacted with you on Twitter, but nice formally meeting you. And Bunt, we go back to the cover one. We go back to the cover one days. Bunt, the last draft extravaganza we've been on was a different group of people. So it's nice being on a new platform and back. I've never talked Sabres on a podcast. I'm not gonna lie. Like when you were going through the prospect pool, I pulled up their stats just to take a look because I worked for the Amherst Merchandise when I attended Brockport, so that's when I really watched them. But I don't really pay attention to Rochester. But I just looked at their numbers, and Oslin does look like a solid player for how young he is, and obviously Roseanne, he's been one of the top players on the Amherst for a while, but seems like he can't put it together yet at the NHL level, whether that's lack of opportunity or whatever it may be. But I'm thankful to be here. I'm excited. And I'm looking forward to the Sabres season. Last time they made the playoffs, I was 9 years old. I remember Nathan Gerby's backhand in Game 6 from the blue line. And then they choked in Game 7. They lost Game 6 and they got walloped in Game 7 in Philly. So that's the last time I really felt like a true Sabres fan. It's been a long time where I've really felt. But I've dipped back in since college. I kind of stepped away when I was in college. But the last couple of years, I've kind of paid attention. So I'm excited for it and looking forward to joining the crew.
Who gave this guy a link? Who let this guy in this podcast?
It was you, Mike.
Yeah.
Crazy. But gentlemen, Islanders are on the clock. And for the first time tonight, the pick is in. 1 second as I get this pulled up. StreamYard's hitting me here. Obviously, Matthew Schaefer off the board, first pick in. And I think my favorite thing about the NHL draft, we're not going to talk too much about the prospects in the beginning here. 3 minutes, you're on the clock. NFL draft, you got 10 minutes. That's so long. We're going to fly through these picks, gentlemen. But yeah, Sabres still own their first pick. Bunty, I know we kind of last talk ended on what we want to do with those prospects. I'm kind of on that same page of, at this point, I just want to see them make a move here where, we can use these prospects to get something in now. We're all looking at that top 6 spot. Everyone's kind of drawing up. You have Benson, Kulich, Thompson, maybe get an upgrade there. But if you bring in a Brian Rust, shore up that second line, and we can move on from that point. But the big news, I think that hasn't happened that a lot of us were thinking about, will Bowen Byrum be traded? I think, at least from my perspective, I thought this was the lock of the Purka rumors, who's going to be moved. I thought Byrum was going to be that guy. We're at this point. If he doesn't get moved before the 9th pick, do you think that's going to change his ability to be moved at all? Or do you think the 9th pick really has no correlation to Byrum's deal? We can start off with Bunty here.
I don't think the 9th pick matters to Bo Byrum getting traded, but I will say this. I think July 1st has maybe something to do with that because you are at risk. If some team does like Bo Byrum enough and they're willing to offer him a 4 or 5 year deal, I don't know what teams would be offering him, but they offered him $6, $7, $8 million long term. If you're the Sabres, I don't think you can match that. So then you're in a situation where you're giving him up to another team for next to nothing. So if you have any fear that somebody else is going to offer sheet him, you got to get rid of him for whatever you can get. Now, at the same time, there's always a possibility. Could the Sabres bridge Byrum and bring him back on a 1 or 2 year deal? I actually don't hate that I don't love it, but I don't hate it. I've been assuming that he's going to get traded this entire offseason. But now that you have Kesselring in as your second pair defenseman with Owen Power, and you have Samuelson and Bernard Docker still, you have this scenario where I'm not saying I love it, but if you put Byrum with Dahlin, and you already know Byrum and Dahlin are fine together, you have Kesselring with Power, and that looks like that should be at least halfway decent. Samuelson with Bernard Docker, it's a third line D. I mean, it's not beautiful, but it's not awful either. There's one executive that said that's actually a formidable defense unit. Like that would probably be the strength of the Sabres roster right there. So while I would still prefer to get Byrum out and get a forward in return, if they're not getting those type of offers, then I don't know. It's really hard to really get a clue on what's going on here because each day you're hearing something else. Yesterday it was that 8 teams are in on Bowen Byrum, and that he has a high demand. I love the pat right there, Gatesy. And then today you're hearing Elliot Friedman. You're hearing Elliot Friedman say today that the offers really haven't been that strong. But then at the same time, you're hearing Jordan Kyrou might be in play if Byrum in a pick or something. And you're like, how can you tell me at one moment the offers aren't strong, but then in another moment that Jordan Kyrou might be in play? How is that? What are we doing here? And then you got
insiders.
Frank Saravelli literally just throwing everything against the wall. And literally half the things is just speculation. So who knows? A lot of people close to Sabres still expect him traded. I'm okay with that, but I don't think it has to happen. I'm not going to grill them if it doesn't happen.
Yeah, and we'll go around the horn to AJ, but before that, I don't know if you guys are watching the draft while this is going on. For anyone at home that is, like, the prospects after they get drafted are like talking on a Zoom call with their organization, and it's I can't comprehend what I'm looking at, but anyone at home that is, please comment how this is going because it looks very awkward. They're standing in front of like a 20-foot TV talking to their GMs. But AJ, I don't know how you feel about Byrum at all.
Yeah, I'm kind of, indifferent about it. Like, I think if you can get Byrum for a top 6 forward and, if you can do that, if you can get for a roster, a Kyrou, and maybe add a pick in there, I think you do it. But I do kind of I saw Mike's tweet, or I saw the tweet Mike was talking about with the executive talking about how the Bills. I'm so used to talking about the Bills.
Come on, man.
I know. The Sabres
have in the Bills draft room for what it's worth. It's not the least relevant it's ever been.
That's a good point.
Right. But I think that extending or giving him a bridge, probably a bridge deal, would make a lot of sense. I don't mind Byrum, but again, I think and I like Owen Power more than most. So I think he's a player that everyone talks about his physicality. Like all my buddies like rip on me. There's like, he's not physical enough. He doesn't hit. I love Power. I think he's going to be a really good player. I think his shot's going to continue to develop. You have to remember, like Rasmus Dahlin, when he came into the league, I know Dahlin was a little more physical than Power, but his shot wasn't there until like his 3rd or 4th year where he really started. You could see the difference in the confidence in the way he shot the puck. So I think if Power gets to that point, obviously adding Kesselring in there, I don't mind the Purka trade, but with Byrum, I think it's, up in the air. Can you get a top 6 forward for him? If you cannot, if there's no demand for him, I think locking him up for a couple more years and seeing what he can do with this defensive unit and continue to learn and grow, because he's still developing, right? He's a younger player, so he still has more potential to show maybe. So I think there is some hope, but I would probably say he's going to get traded. It just feels that way now. I thought he was going to be traded first, and me and Mike discussed this on the phone last night. Like, do you think, and I kind of want to ask Vinny this, I don't know what he thinks, but Vinny, do you think like trading Purka and what the Sabres got in return for Purka affects how the league views Byrum and what the Sabres might get in return for Byrum? Do you think that is that any correlation? Or do you think those are two separate situations?
I would have to imagine that in any professional sports trade scenario, if you have a team that is making multiple deals, you always have to take into account what that other deal was,
right? Because
you're doing that math on like where the leverage is. And so like the other NHL teams, assuming that Utah does not also want to trade for Bowen Byrum, the other 30 NHL teams that are not the Sabres and the Mammoth are trying to figure out where the Sabres want to go with this trade, because then they know that the Sabres quote unquote need or are looking for specific positions, and then they can kind of play that leverage game. Now the other part of that is like, well, if you're calling me trying to make a trade, and I know you're offering me Bo and Byrum, whoever you're asking me for in the trade is what you want. So then it just becomes like, how bad do you want that, and how bad do you feel you need it? If anything, like now that you've at least in that trade, you could say you've acquired a forward and a defenseman. So like in theory, it's not like you need that roster player. And I do think that depending on how good those making the trade phone calls are at saying like, no, like we're good. Like, I'm offering you this good defenseman because this and this. But the Byrum situation, because it's been in the public so long, I do think takes some leverage away from Buffalo inherently.
Right.
And I don't know that there's a large enough percentage of that comes away from the Purka trade. Although I do think that, there's now the teams are like kind of changing. Maybe there was a team that was involved in the Purka talks. And now that they, maybe they also would have been interested in Byrum, but like they'll just call them back and say, hey, Kevin, now what's the deal here, right? So I think that's it. There's something to be said. I will say this, two things. Matthew Schaefer seemingly very emotional to get drafted first overall. So happy for him and congratulations. Definitely weirded out by the 20-foot Zoom call screen thing. Thirdly, Gatesy, I have to ask, is your cat a Panthers fan because it is a cat?
Yeah, I mean, he loves chaos. Like, I'm gonna break the fourth wall a little bit. Anytime there's paper towels out, any sort of paper, he'll rip it to shreds. So it does kind of feel like a Florida Panthers move to just make my life a living pain. So I do think he has that side to him. But yeah, no, I kind of agree with you guys there. And it's weird. In my mind going into this offseason, Bo and Byrum was never putting on a Sabres jersey again, and I was content about it. I look at the Sabres decor now with him there. You put him alongside Rasmus Dahlin. They had a lot of success there. He was obviously at his best playing alongside the Sabres captain. If for whatever reason the Sabres can't get a deal done, they can't get what they want via the Byrum trade, him on that back end isn't the worst thing. It's not the best thing, but it isn't the worst thing. I obviously want to see the Sabres move that, bring in that top six forward to play alongside him. And we can go from there. Pick 2 is about to be rolling in. We're getting close to 9. I don't know if anyone has, I sent some texts in the group chat beforehand, a guy you want the Sabres to take at 9. Is there, a specific guy or position or, anything you're even looking forward to at this 9 pick that Kevin Adams could do here? We can swing back around through Vinny.
Yeah, so as you can see on these, I will say, pretty sick graphics we've got
Thank
here
you.
today.
Shout out to graphics guy. Big pay
that's
raise for that guy.
I came in here. I mean, I don't know a lot of these people, but it's good. It's really
Good job. Good job, Casey.
Shout out that guy.
You deserve your due.
Yeah, absolutely, Gatesy. This is good stuff. And so my thoughts to answer that question, as you can see on the graphic on that direction, is I think I kind of prefer Victor Eklund. And I'll be honest with you, and I don't mean to stray away from the NHL to do this, but one of my claims to fame, quote unquote, is that I predicted Creed Humphrey would be a great center. And the reason is because I looked at his name when I saw NFL draft prospects and I said, Creed Humphrey, that's a sick name. This guy's going to be really good. I think that Victor Eklund has a great hockey name. And so when the first time I went through the draft prospects, I thought, this guy's going to be sick at hockey because he's got a great hockey name. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But I do know that it seems like the consensus is he's a top 10 talent. He's a forward, and I think that the type of game he plays might work. He's a scorer. He's a good forechecker, which is something that we talked about earlier, and that's a thing that I think the Sabres need, is to create turnovers in the offensive zone. And he's a little bit more physical than a lot of the prospects the Sabres have seemed to draft as of late. And I like that combination of factors in a player. So to me, I think I like Eklund if the Sabres do make the pick at 9, which is, again, what a lot of us think they're going to do, because we assume they likely won't trade it.
Oh, almost. There we go. Michael Misa in for San Jose. I think 1 and 2 are pretty set in stone from this point on. I think we'll get a little variety here. AJ, how are you kind of feeling? Do you have any guys in mind for the draft, or you just kind of along for the ride here? Premier Crossing Swords podcast episode. But probably one of the biggest days in your life, I would say.
I would say, yeah, this has got to be up there. I mean, top 10 for sure. Who is the assistant general manager's name that spoke with Kevin Adams the other day?
Well, that's Fortin.
Jerry Fortin, yeah.
Okay, Fortin. He talked about he was asking, they both Adams and Fortin kind of both talked about it, how like there's 6 or 7 guys that they feel like they hope like the fifth, 6th or 7th guy kind of drops to 9 where they can where they feel really comfortable. So whatever one of those guys are, if they come out after and say that was one of the guys that we had higher that we got good value at 9, I would be happy with that. I think that's important to delegate who your top 6 or 7 are, who you could see falling, because it seemed like the top 4 or 5 guys are pretty solidified in terms of like they're going to be selected in the top 4 or top 5, but after that it's kind of like random in terms of what teams need, what teams' needs are and all that. So I think if they can get a guy that they value higher than where they're selecting is always a win. So that's going to be the most interesting thing for me in terms of my takeaway is when they speak after how they talk about the player. Is that a guy that they really valued at that pick, or did they kind of reach and kind of panicked, right? And that guy didn't fall. And then in that situation, do they trade down? Do they stay and reach? That's kind of what I'm interested in. Not really a prospect, but just how they kind of handle it at 9. Do they package it with Byrum to get a player? There's a lot they could do, but again, it's so hard. And Adams and Fortin said it over and over again. It's so hard in these top 10 to really make a trade, especially moving up, moving down, or even moving the pick in general. It's really hard at the NHL for some reason. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But again, I hope they get a guy that they value, that their scouting department has really looked at, and a guy that they trust, and they're not reaching and kind of panicking at that pick. I want them to be comfortable and to be a guy that they really have done their work on, and he can contribute within the next 3 or 4 years. Because at this point, right, we're not done with the youth movement, but we need veterans on this team. We need established guys, and this pick really, all that matters to me is it a guy that they value? Is it a guy that they think was a top 6 or 7 talent that fell? Or is it a guy that they kind of reached for? That'll be kind of the telling tale for me.
Yeah, before you get to Bunty, this whole big screen, looking at the draft rooms, all the guest draft pickers as well, I'm very interested. I didn't see who picked for the Islanders, but Bailey from the WWE picked for San Jose. I don't know the connection there, if there is one. But the San Jose draft room, it looks like they're in a theater. They're in the film room right now. So I guess that's something to watch along. Maybe there's something fun in there. I think the Sabres will have the best draft room out of anyone having an actual draft room this year. But Bunty, how are you feeling at pick 9? I know, we obviously own assets at top 6, but if there's a guy that's falling, is anyone you're happy with at 9?
Yeah, so after I told you guys how I felt about the Sabres' actual prospects, you guys probably can't wait to hear what I'll say about somebody that will be joining that group of players in the near future.
Maybe they trade him.
After spending a ton of minutes reading up on these prospects just now, I think I'm down to a few players.
Go with the name thing. I think Victor Eklund is a great hockey name. It really is. I mean, he is right about it. I mean, I might just join the. I want him. I want that guy.
So I've had a group of like 3 players I've been thinking about during this process, knowing that one is completely unrealistic, and then the other 2 could happen. So my dream scenario, I've been talking about James Higgins a lot, just because a lot of hype around him.
Yep.
Great college hockey player. You always like to see guys get drafted that you recognize and and that you've actually had the ability to watch. The couple names that keep going into my head that I think would be possibilities, obviously Radim Purka, the defenseman, he's been talked about a lot in this spot. And then the other name I've been thinking a lot about is Roger McQueen.
Great name.
Big center, obviously would bring a different dimension to the Sabres forward room. McQueen is probably the guy that would be my top realistic possibility right now. Will he get to 9? That's a question. He could fall to 9, but I don't know 100% if he will. Other guys that have been seen, I've seen mentioned with the Sabres a lot, Jake O'Brien, and then Aitchison. So those are a couple guys that have been brought up too. But I would say McQueen is probably my number one realistic option, and then Purka is probably right there, just because those are two guys that it seems like that's the spot that they're supposed to be. The thing that's tough, though, the NHL draft, like even more so now than maybe like 3-4 years ago with the Sabres went through a period where they were so bad, where even when they were picking like 7, 8, like you're like, oh, this guy maybe is like a year away. Maybe he could even play this year in a few games if things go right. Now we're at the point where if any of these guys play on the Sabres in the next 2 years, you know it's because the team just stinks still. So while we talked about Hellenius earlier, not wanting to trade him, part of me is like, I wish I had an NHL proven player in return for Hellenius or something, because how many years are we going to talk about Roseanne as a first round pick? And is Roseanne ever even going to be on the Sabres? Like, let's be real. Is Isaac Roseanne ever going to do anything in the NHL for the Buffalo Sabres? Who knows? Who knows at this point? And by the time you get to be 22, 23, 24, what value are you going to have going forward? Not much. So, like, the same thing with a lot of these guys. Like, I like Noah Ostlund, but Noah Ostlund is going to have to make a leap to really be a contributor on the Sabres in the near future. So I don't see the avenues for these guys. Like, if Ryan McLeod ends up signing a 4 or 5 year deal, if Kulich takes a leap, if Norris, and I'm not saying that there's no avenues at all. Like, a lot of these guys could be gone and they could trade them, and there's a lot of different ways they can mess with their roster. But this is why I get so frustrated with Sabres management and ownership, is because I think the thought process of most fans is this team has no talent, this team stinks, this team is so far away. And my thought process is more of, this team has talent, this team has guys, they need to get rounded into shape, and they need to flip out a couple people for the right balance to get the right type of team together. And people will look at you and like me, and they'll be like, well, that's crazy. You're an idiot. You're a Sabres half full guy. And like, I get it. Like, I'll accept that. But the truth of it is, the Sabres team is not some shitty team. The Montreal Canadiens came out of nowhere last year and made the playoffs. Ottawa Senators literally just added Linus Ullmark. They make the playoffs. Utah had 89 points last year. We're talking about the best Sabres season. I'll wait till after you get this pick.
No, you can go through it, Bunty.
We're talking about the Sabres' best season of the last 14 years was a year where they had no expectations, and they were like, you know what? We're just going to let our kids play. So don't tell me team success is all based on having this and this and this. Like, the Sabres have enough guys to win. They just need to go out and start playing hockey the way men play hockey, and stop being a bunch of young, immature kids that aren't willing to do the necessary things to win hockey. People hate on Craig Rivet and Andrew Peters, and sometimes rightfully so. Like, I love them, but then sometimes I hate what they have to say at times, because they can say some crazy things too. But one thing that Craig Rivet and Andrew Peters are spot on about all the time is that you need to have a better mentality. You need to have a certain toughness. And you know what? I know analytics don't judge toughness. Analytics doesn't judge what mentally is inside of you. But when you go after kid after kid after kid after kid, you know what you're not getting taught when you don't have the proper veterans around them? How to do things the right way. And I don't even want to think about prospects. Give me players that play hockey the right way.
Yeah. That's the biggest thing. We're not going to see these results right away unless it's something crazy like a Zach Benson. And in that year, he was the guy that fell. Kind of that same conversation we're seeing now with James Hagen's a guy that's falling. I mean, we look back to that presser AJ was talking about with Fortin. He was saying the Sabres don't draft based on needs of the roster now. They draft based on the needs of their prospect pool. I'm looking defense there. I mean, Vinny, you probably have a bit sharper eye with the Rochester things, but it's really just Novikov as that younger defenseman who can make that jump to the NHL. Granted, the Sabres have, a pretty shored up D room right now. But I think that's the direction I'm going to go. AJ, I know it's getting close to 7:40 here. do you have any kind of, wants for the Buffalo Sabres going into this offseason? Anything that's at the top of your mind that's like, okay, if we get this, I'm going to be feeling a bit better going into October?
Yeah, two things. One's like a player that I need to see hit his stride, and the other is like a need that I want them to address. The first thing I want to see, and I know Bunt says it all the time to me, he always says it, is that the goaltender position is like running back in the NFL, and you need to surround your goaltender with adequate defenders and back checkers that are from the forward position that are able to play the defensive scheme that Lindy Ruff wants. However, it's not that I don't believe in UPL and Levi, but I do want a veteran goalie, whether that's, I don't know the names out there, but I do want to see a guy that come in with some experience, some knowledge, that's done it. Because UPL and Levi, they still haven't done it. UPL's had he had a really good season a couple years ago. Obviously last year struggled at the NHL level. So we'll see, mentally how he is going into the season. And same with Levi. He was really great in Rochester. Playoffs, I don't want to say fell off a little bit, but they struggled. And particularly he struggled in the playoffs down the stretch there in Rochester. So I just don't feel comfortable there yet. And every year, like, we're always talking about like these Craig Andersons and the Reimers of the world having these like great moments for the Sabres in net. I want them to like actually get a quality guy that you can trust for 30, 40 games. And then the last thing, I want to get to Jack Quinn real quick. He just signed that extension. I know I'm sure you guys have already talked about it. Coming off an Achilles injury, last year, he just did not have I don't want to say the game sense, because I think he does understand how that game of hockey is played. He's very good at hockey, and he's proven that throughout his, amateur years of playing the game. But he just seemed out of place sometimes, and his puck possession was weak. He didn't really seem to move the puck well. And the only time he really had his glimpses were when the puck was given to him in the slot, when he could show off his shot he still hasn't lost that, right? So I want to see Jack Quinn develop as a skater, as a puck possession guy. And I think that will greatly help the Sabres, especially on that third line, if that's where he is, or second line, whatever. I think that will really help them get to that next level, because Quinn can put the puck in the net. And I think, $3.75 million it was per year. That's a kind of not a big commitment but for a player of his, what he's done in the league and his, you know what I'm trying to say. They need him to step up big time, because it's just so important. And I think coming off that Achilles injury, all the offseason training, I want to see more speed, more confidence with the puck, and just an overall better player, which I think we can. And I hope to see that, because he's very important to the success of the team this year.
Can I add one thing to that? And then I'll let you go, Vinny and Gatesy. I do think the Sabres need a veteran goalie too. And I know I'm the goalie equals running back in football, and I still stand by that. But
I like it.
My thought process, and really analytically, it is pretty similar in many regards. The running back needs a good offensive line to create holes. But what do you say about running back in football? The elite ones, like Saquon Barkley, they have the breakaway ability. The Christian McCaffrey, you can spread them out and they can have success in other ways. Or a Derrick Henry can run over guys. The elite ones have that special ability to where they can persevere and have success in spite of what is in front of them, while average ones, little variance, and then bad ones, they could have the biggest hole and they're still not going to take advantage of it. It's kind of the same way in hockey, where with goalie, an elite goalie is going to elevate your team. Even if your defense struggles, even if your forwards don't back check, they're going to find a way to carry your team. That's what Dominic Hasek was. Elite. Patrick Waugh, guys like that back in the day. Marty Brodeur. So if you have one of those, sign them to a $10 million contract and let them win you games. The issue is, from goalies 6 to 25, you don't know what they're going to have on a nightly basis, and it's more dependent on what the play is in front of them. And why give big money to one of those when you don't get consistency from them? And that's the problem. The issue for the Sabres is that the Sabres have had that strategy. Let's hope we can get average goaltending from UPL or from these veterans. But their goaltending has been awful. And when you have that bottom five goaltending, that is where you actually do see some of that variance that hurts you. So if the Sabres have had the average goaltending the last 5 years, we'd probably be like, okay, it's fine if you spent like a combined $5-6 million on goaltending and you'll get by. You can survive.
Mm-hmm.
But the Sabres have had not just bad goaltending. They've had bottom of the league goaltending outside of 2 seasons ago when UPL carried them for quite a while. So what the issue they have now, though, is that they already have $4+ million committed to UPL. So if you want to get a proven veteran goalie, you're going to have to spend at least $5-6 million. And then next thing you know, you have $10+ million allocated to 2 goalies. The problem is $10+ million I just told you is what some elite goalie would get you. But you're not getting the production of that elite goalie. Instead, now you're spreading that $10 million across 2 average goalies that are going to get you average variance. So then from a salary cap standpoint, you're not getting the return on your investment that you should. So statistically, if the Sabres improve their blue line, if the Sabres improve their back checking, you have a better probability of return on investment by UPL returning to at least average form and getting another low-level goalie playing average than you do of spending $5-6 million on somebody that has had good seasons on a better roster and then them possibly regressing on your team. So that's where like the math is involved. That said, if I was the Sabres, and I know I'm going on and on and on, so I apologize, what I would do in this situation, don't kill me, I would go after another older veteran goalie that you can get on a discount. I know it sounds crazy, but why did Reimer look so good at the end of the season? Because he was just a good average goalie who was doing his job. Why did Craig Anderson look like a great goalie? Because he's just a veteran goalie that was doing his job. That's the proof. You don't need to invest a lot. The issue with both of those guys is they were older veterans that can't take on a high workload. So what you really kind of have to do if you're the Sabres is you need to find the happy spot to where UPL can bounce back and maybe not be elite, but be good. Like hope for UPL to be good, carry enough of the load while finding a 30 to 35 game backup goalie like that's an older veteran on a fair contract that can play at a good level when he's in the lineup, but not wear them out to where they have to be the guy. So I don't know who that goalie is. I don't know how you find it, but I'm sure there's someone out there that would love to still be in the NHL and be able to produce. I'm scared of Levi being back, but the numbers, let's be real, Levi has probably just as good of a chance of being somewhat productive as some random person that you're giving money to. So who knows how it's going to work out. I want to get a veteran goalie, but we'll see how they decide to go forward.
Yeah, and just to add one more point, then I'm going to get out of here. I more so want the veteran goalie, and I get it. Like, I want him to produce, and I want him, like Mike said, to play, 30, 35 games or whatever. That'd be awesome. But I think just the presence of a veteran goalie, like same thing, like how the Bills roster build, right? They signed Trey White, veteran, who's been in the system in the offseason. They signed Dane Jackson in the offseason, veteran. You know what he is, right? But then you also add Maxwell Hairston in the first round, who you project to be that guy. I think just a voice, and you saw Zucker's impact. Zucker's impact was greater than off the ice. And I know, Purka had his issues and Cousins had his issues and that and such. But that kind of weave them out of there, right? They're gone now. We don't have to talk about Cousins and Purka in a Sabres uniform anymore, and that kind of experiment failed. But I think just the presence of a veteran goalie and him being that mentor to UPL and Levi, a guy that's done it, a guy that's had experience around the league, I think that's more so why I want a veteran goalie, because I think that's so important. I think that's why the Bills did what they did in their cornerback room, and that's kind of how I want the Sabres to go about their goaltending room. And I get it. Mike's right. You're spending, what do you got to pay, $5 to $6 million, and you're allocating $10+ million to a goalie that you could just get an elite goalie for that price. But they're not in that. They can't. They put themselves in this position because they extended UPL for that. So they kind of have to. I feel like they have to do something. And I'm hopeful that UPL and Levi could maybe figure it out, right? Like I don't doubt extremely that it won't work. But I definitely want to add a veteran goalie just for the mentorship aspect of a guy that's done it. But all right, I am going to leave. I appreciate Mike, Vinny, Gatesy. You're all great. Keep doing what you're doing. Best Sabres podcast around. I'm excited to be in season talking Sabres, and I will see you boys hopefully sooner rather than later.
Yeah, thank you, AJ.
Have a good night.
You too. Quick, I'll hop on that real fast, and I'll go to you, Vinny. With the goalies, I mean, one that's interesting that I see on the rumors for is John Gibson from Anaheim. That could be the older goalie who's still really good. And I think UPL's best season, he started the year as a Sabres third string. Levi was the one. I think they had Anderson at the two. It took UPL a long time to even get in the net. He got it and ran with it. He could be a goalie too that just needs that push where he doesn't know if the net is his. And we kind of saw that last year. Once Reimer took over the net for the long stretch, I thought UPL got a little bit better towards the end. But again, a lot of his issues just come from being too aggressive. So see what happens there. Vinny, how are you feeling on the goaltending front? I mean, even we saw there's some rumors, granted they're rumors of UPL potentially moving. We're not going to talk about that for Duke Dutchy's sake, but in terms of Sabres net minding, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think there's been rumors of Anaheim trading John Gibson since like 2012.
Yeah,
right.
every year.
I feel like this guy is always seemingly on the trade block and nothing
Just
ever happens. And he is pretty good. He's a great example of the type of player or type of goalie that I would have loved to have added to the Sabres 5 years ago and thought that would have been an awesome trade back then. And I thought it would have been a great trade 3 years ago. And it was an offseason move I wanted last offseason. And it just has never materialized. And for that reason, I don't see it materializing again. But I do agree that they need to make a change at the position. Now, that change doesn't necessarily mean taking a goalie that's currently on the roster off the roster. But I do not think Levi is ready to be even a 1A, 1B goalie in the NHL at this point. UPL is that, but I don't think he can be the number one option based on his play now. Especially just looking at how last season went with him as that number one guy on a consistent basis. I'm concerned about the longevity of that position based on how unstable it seems like it has been now for the last 2 years. And so I do think we need to add a more proven goaltender that can play better minutes and start more games reliably and not be maybe as worn down as maybe like Craig Anderson got at the end of his career, even though he was really solid still. I mean, awesome. That was a veteran who you had to manage their workload, and rightfully so. They earned that at that point. I will say this because, quite frankly, I think I want on the record. I think a goalie is more valuable than a running back in football, mostly because there are way more players on the field in football, and that
it's not a perfect comparison. Right. I do agree with you. It is an oversimplification, but it's more of a making a point.
Yeah, and so with that now, and I can understand the area you're coming from, which is that, and it always is true, right? Like certain players are going to be different in certain systems. You've always said that, and goalies definitely look worse on high event hockey teams that are not as capable defensively. And yeah, I think part of the reason that UPL has been bad, maybe not bad, but part of the reason that UPL has maybe not put up the numbers that we would have liked is that the defense has been subpar also. And it's really been the offense that has been the area that we've maybe said we don't need to see that much turnover. Although it seems like each year it's cyclical because whereas it's ever heard of the I don't even know what to call it, the farming scenario where you have 3 fields and you grow on 2 of them and one of them you leave bare so the nutrients come back. Well, it seems like in the 3 phases of the game, offense, defense, and goaltending, and I won't include special teams because it deserves to be included, but it just doesn't fit my point, so I'm going to omit it on purpose. Sorry, that's a logical fallacy, but I digress. I think that instead of having 2 working and 1 not working, we've had 1 working and the other 2 aren't. And at this point, it seems like the forward group is working and the defense and the goaltending was not. And for that reason, I'm thinking that some help, and it seems the team is going. Of course, adding Kesselring, and you assume Power is going to take another step here. But yeah, I think that if the defense gets help, that's going to help the goalie. And right now, because I don't actually see a solution in that I love, my solution to that almost is just, try to get better defensively and help your goalie out, to be honest with you.
So, Vinny, before you go, I do have a couple quick Rochester questions just regarding the Sabres. So, Levi, you watched a ton of games of the Americans last year. does he need, or do you think him playing another full year in Rochester is good? Or like, what's it going to take for him to jump? Then are there any names in Rochester who might be a surprise to make that Buffalo roster and be a good sight for fans? We saw last year Tyson Kozak was incredible. I'm big on him. But are there any other guys in Rochester that could be fun to see in Buffalo that might get that jump next year?
Yeah, there's a couple names. First things first, is Shea Weber announcing the Nashville Predators draft pick from a golf course?
Yeah, he's outside. There's been some crazy ones. Yeah, he's not centered in the frame and on the golf course. So shout out Shea Weber. That's nice for him.
That's great. Yeah, good for him, dude. It looks a little windy out there. Hopefully he's hitting them straight. But in all seriousness,
Mike is probably not picking up any of it.
Yeah, I bet that whoever is working the audio system there is really having to put their time in. So with Levi, it's not that I think he should. I wish this was a video game because it'd be so much easier. But I would almost prefer Levi to do like I don't want to say like an up-down scenario because that just seems like it wouldn't help. But not only is the pick in, the immediate camera shot of Brady Martin getting selected by the Predators is him with like 12 golden retriever puppies. So if you're going to get a fan favorite player anywhere, that guy is immediately loved by tons of NHL fans right now. That was adorable. Okay, back to Rochester. Levi is. I think he's not. I don't think he's ready to again be that like 1B goaltender. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it serves his development well to just be a backup or, God forbid, that 3 goalie system that the Sabres used for so long. I don't think that's productive for his development either. So while I would love for him to prove me wrong and come up to Buffalo and play well, I think that quite frankly, isn't ready for that level of NHL consistent play yet.
Let me ask you, why do you say that? Because to casual fans that look at his numbers, they would say that each point of his career and development, he got to a plateau where it was clear he was ready for that next step. And if you're looking at his numbers from junior to college to AHL, he's producing at the AHL level now. How will you know he's ready for the NHL until you throw him out there? I guess that's my number one part. And I'm not stating my opinion, just asking you. And number two,
no, you're right. And
is it something about what you're observing when you're watching him that says, well, he's not doing this properly. If he goes to the NHL, this is going to get exploited. Because I still have some. I'll say this about Levi. I do think if he played on a better defensive team, he could get by as a backup NHL goalie right now. I just don't think the Buffalo Sabres have proven that they can be that team. And I think it has a carryover impact. You play on a bad team, you get a lot of chances against you. Then occasionally you let in a weak one, then it hits your confidence, and it's just a trickle-down effect. While in Rochester, better team, better results. Like if Devin Levi is a backup on one of the best defensive teams in the league, he's probably putting up decent numbers in the NHL right now.
Yes, you're right. And the part of the reason that I don't think he deserves to play a full season in Rochester either. And by that, not deserving, I don't mean that he deserves less than that. I mean, he's above that. Yeah. But you have to find out if he's NHL ready. The only way he'll be able to do that is for him to play in the NHL. And I think he should see time in blue and gold this year, or black and red. But what does concern me about his style of game is more so from the eye test than it is from his statistical numbers in Rochester, because his numbers are good and he plays well. But when the Americans play better and more talented teams that play a faster style of hockey, he struggles with overcommitting because of his size. Now, that is part of his game. Because he's a smaller goalie, he has to overcommit. And when he does that, it cuts off angles and it makes it harder for teams to make the clean play and then get the puck by him. But if you play a really talented AHL team, for example, like the Laval Rocket, they score because their puck movement on offense is successful when things are aggressive against them and the goalie comes out. They can make that extra pass and not have it poked away by a defender. And this goes back to your point, Bunty, is that when a team is bad defensively and that back checker is not coming back to break up that last second pass, it works. And now you've got half the net to shoot at because Levi comes out on the odd man rush. They come in, he cuts off the shot, they drop it to the high guy, and instead of the back checker coming back to take away that guy's quick shot or forcing him to take it quicker instead of stopping and looking, that's when things go awry. And I think that's just a result of Levi's play style and not so much him being bad at something, if that makes sense. I think he will adjust to that as he gets used to the speed of the NHL game and develops. So again, this is not to say he will never be a great NHL goaltender. I absolutely think he can be, but right now I think he's just got to cross that bridge. And then, quite frankly, if he proves me wrong, which I want him to do, and I think he's perfectly capable of doing, then I change my tune. But from this point, I need to see it before I can believe it. And right now, because I don't believe it, my other solution, is getting better defensively and finding a different type of goal, a different veteran goalie.
I know you have to go soon, so I just want to have my quick rebuttal. And I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying you're right. It's just thoughts that are coming to my head. My concern with what you just said was you said because he's a smaller goalie, he has to overplay certain things. He's not going to magically get taller, though, and he's not going to magically get bigger. So some of this is just going to be his style of play and what he'll need to do. And Gatesy, you were the college goalie, so you know better about this than I can. But my concern,
small college goalie.
Hey, that's still goalie. You know,
same thing as Levi.
My concern is this. So if that's a problem in Rochester, and he's always going to be small, that's going to be a problem in the NHL. And there's only one way you really find out if he can get through that or not, and that's playing him. So my thought process is this. Yes, American Hockey League players are not always going to be able to snipe the way NHL players can snipe. So NHL players are going to be able to take advantage of you because they're the best shooters in the world. Just like ECHL players aren't going to be able to play like American Hockey League players because they don't have the speed and some of that too. I just think we're getting close to a point with Levi in the next year or two to where if you don't throw him in the NHL because you're worried about that, then you just wasted. Then he's just a waste of a prospect at that point. Maybe he could be great in the American Hockey League going forward, but that's just the way he's going to have to play. And if that's not going to change, why not just see what's out there? And the concern is the reason why we say, well, we can't do it in Buffalo is because the team doesn't play defense or because the team is a losing team. Well, then if you're saying a goalie can't be called up because of the players around him, you're basically saying the goalie isn't good enough to get it done. And the one other thing I would add on top of that, clearly this organization, when they traded for him and when they signed him and brought him in and had him starting in net during a 91-point season where they're fighting for the playoffs, clearly there was a point in this organization where they thought not just like backup goalie, like he could be the future and he could be really good really soon. So they ended up correcting that, getting the development. But I don't think this is something we can wait another 2-3 years for. I think the time for Levi has to be either some point this year or next year. What I would want to do personally, I wish we could trade UPL and get in another starting goalie and then give Levi 25 starts to where he can learn in the NHL without a high pressure situation, be able to get some games in, but have somebody carry the weight. The problem is you have UPL committed to $4 million plus on a 4-year contract, and there's no avenue for that. I don't know how much better Levi can get playing in Rochester going forward.
Yeah, I mean, Vinny, you want to hop in real quick?
No, go ahead, Gatesy.
I just want to talk to you on like the side, like kind of the little more nuance just from Levi. We talked his size, his play style. The reason that is important, you look at, I think the best goalie in the NHL right now, UC Saros, who's Levi's height. They're both super small guys. He's probably listed at 5'11". He's probably 5'9" on a really good day. He's a smaller guy, but he plays controlled. Levi and UPL have the same issues in my mind where they're just way too aggressive and they get out of position. And you see how the Sabres are, like, think defensively as a defenseman, you have a 2-on-1, you want your goalie to take the shot. But the Sabres, sometimes they get too aggressive. And, I think that big issue too of these goalies playing so young is they kind of build some bad habits. They have to get over and make these crazy backdoor saves instead of making a lot of times the easier option. So I'm hoping, UPL this year, Levi this year, it's another year they can just slow it down. UPL took a big step back, not doing so, but you want to hop in quick with some goalie stuff?
Yeah, so this will be my last point, and I'll let you rebuttal it with me gone, and you guys can just have your way with whatever I say.
I'll talk behind your back afterwards.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. I'll finish my point on the UPL. I don't hate that concept. I really don't. That's all I'll say. With Levi, I think the biggest thing for me is once he gets to a point where the game has slowed down enough for him to be able to process it, he won't make those kind of mistakes. And so for me, I don't need him. That's why I don't need him to be that 1B this year. Now, I wouldn't mind if he was playing regular NHL minutes, and this goes back to the other goaltending point. If you had a better starting goaltender, you could let him be that other backup occasionally, but he's just not. So I think that if he can go down to the AHL, he almost has to be in the AHL because the other option is a 3-goalie thing, which I don't like. Now, going back to your other original question, Gatesy, other players on Rochester, I think Consta Helenius will be NHL ready eventually. I don't know what that time frame is. I think it's maybe next season. It could be a year that he might do a Kozak situation, and he's like 21 and he's playing fourth line minutes. I think Kozak is one of those players. And defensively, I know that right now there's not a ton of them in Rochester that seem like they're like NHL jump. Ryan Johnson doesn't really seem to be that guy. I have been on the Zachary Metza train for a while now. He's older, so I know it doesn't translate as well. But the way that he plays the game, I think translates to him being a quiet, irrelevant NHL defenseman, which is exactly what you want out of a third pairing guy. If you can give someone who you forget is on your roster sometimes as a defenseman, that is wonderful. So from what I've seen out of Metza, he's capable of producing offensively. He knows what winning is like. He was the captain on the Quinnipiac Bobcats team that won the national championship. Mm-hmm. And not only can he score, but he's solid defensively. He is a very solid, solid and fluid player. Sometimes you look at a shift and you're like, oh, like Rochester had good zone possession, cycling it well back to the point. Eventually had to make a line change. Other team comes down because the forwards switched, weren't forechecking anymore. And they had an even strength rush type deal. Rochester gets out, solid breakout, go down, take a shot, goalie makes a save off its own faceoff. And then they cut to a tight camera following the defenseman coming back to the bench, and it's Metza. It's like, oh yeah, of course Rochester had a good shift at both ends because Metza was out there helping facilitate it. I really think that he is a guy that maybe deserves a shot to play at the NHL level and be a silent, really good bottom pairing defenseman in blue and gold. Whether that's part of the Sabres plan or not, I'm not sure, but that's one guy I would like to see get some time from the Sabres from Rochester. With that, I'm going to unplug my laptop, let this thing finally die as it's been begging to do for the last hour because the battery and the charger do not work simultaneously anymore, and hopefully get a chance to catch the rest of the draft with Buffalo very soon on the clock. But thank you, guys. It was a blast, guys. I've had a lot of fun. Looking forward to talking to you guys again soon.
Hey, thank you, Vinny. Thank you for the near 8,000 people here live as we get near the Buffalo's Sabres pick. Bunty, we're 6 picks in. Let me we got pick is just in. I'll do some graphics real quick, but the draft is moving along little by little. Has these conversations with Vinny, AJ, myself made you think differently about how this Sabres team is going to look come October, or are you still kind of in the same mindset of where you were going into this?
Yeah, I feel pretty similar to how I felt going to today. The big part that I don't know yet is what are they going to do with Byrum, and then are they going to get another forward into this picture? And that's really the two things that can kind of change my opinion on the team. I don't think I want a goalie, but I don't think whatever goalie addition they make is going to change my opinion significantly. If they got a Brian Rust on this team, maybe I'm going to think like, oh, maybe they got more veteran leadership. Maybe they can take a step. A lot of our talks, and I think, like I said, I leave myself open to being attacked by Sabres fans with the things I say. But a lot of my feeling is, can this team be put together in a way where they can start playing hockey the right way? And I'll say this, I'll take a less talented team that does the right things versus a talented team that does the wrong things. And when you look at free agency, when you look at trades, it's always going to be looking at the numbers right away and the advanced metrics. And we know the Sabres, they struggle with winning these trades. They struggle with a lot of their moves because a lot of people have no trade clauses that include Buffalo. A lot of free agents don't want to come to Buffalo. So you've been forced to do this youth and develop mode over and over. And then half the times you develop somebody good, they want out after a certain period of time. But I think that's why Lindy Ruff is so intent on trying to put together a team that just knows how to do things the right way. Because let's be real, that's what they did when they won things with him. They did things the right way. And that was during a non-salary cap era where there was teams spending 2 times as much money as the Sabres. They were winning and going to the Eastern Conference Finals. And, yeah, everybody thinks about Drury and Briere. I think about 98, 99 when they had Miroslav Shatan, Alexei Zhitnik, Vaclav Varada, and Wayne Primo, and different guys like that. Curtis Brown, Richard Smellick. I could go on and on.
You got them all, Bunty. Locked and loaded.
98, 99. See, Eric Rasmussen. I was going to say Finnegan, but a little bit later. Jeff Sanderson, like Michael Pekka. Like, those weren't stars, but they were like Mike Pekka. I think of him, and I'm like, that's a perfect hockey player. Like, good forward, offensively productive, but always doing the right thing defensively. Always a team first player.
So.
And that's what the Sabres need more of. They need guys that are going to commit to both sides of the ice and be responsible. And it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen overnight. And yes, last year they regressed with Lindy, and I think Lindy was frustrated by the results he was getting out of some of these young players, and they're trying to change that. And Sabres fans are going to be frustrated with some of these guys that come in because they're not going to be the biggest names. But if they can buy into Lindy's approach, if they do the things that they're asked upon, I do think there's room. I'm not saying it will happen. I think there's room for this team to take a step in a positive direction this upcoming season.
Yeah, I can't wait for the next Beyond Blue and Gold or Sabres Embedded. I forget the exact name of it now. I feel like we're just going to watch, Moneyball at this point. I think Kevin Adams watched Moneyball. We're bringing in the right players, not the best players. And I think that makes sense for Lindy Ruff coach team and where the Sabres are in terms of their 14-year playoff drought, where they've kind of been hitting their head against the wall of, bringing in these guys young, the guys that are best, most skilled, and it's not working. And, you bring in a soccer coach, it doesn't help. We all know what the past 14 years have brought for this organization. I think we are going to see that. We are now 2 picks away from the Buffalo Sabres, thanks to the over 8,000 people here tuning in. Bunty, our long shots all off the board now. James Hagen's taken by the Bruins. That was kind of the name. Where's he going to fall and land? Bruins take him at 7. My guy Frondell lost a little bit earlier. I thought he was going to fall a bit more. Did not happen. But in terms of our realistic guys, they're all still there. Roger McQueen, fantastic name, still on the board. Eklund and Murtka, still no defenseman off the board. So, we're looking good on that front. Bunty, 1 pick away. It doesn't look like the Sabres are going to make that trade. We haven't seen any trades tonight at all. No picks, no players. So I guess, I know we talked on, the board and what it looks like, which we'll figure that out as we go. But do you envision Kevin Adams drafting a guy at 9 and then dealing him this offseason, or do you kind of see that not being a possibility at all?
Yeah, I don't think that'd be likely. You would have a better chance of
doing before.
In NBA, it'd be a different story. But
yeah. I mean, the NBA, you guys get drafted and they're traded while they're like walking on stage. I'm like, what?
But yeah, I'd say they're going to keep the pick. They're going to probably develop the player, and fans are going to be upset. Why didn't you trade him? And it's funny. Every year they talk about, there's going to be a trade in the top 10, and then what do you ever see? Next to nothing. So
never happened.
Which is interesting too, because it is long-term development, and that's the thing we have to remind ourselves. Just because we feel the urgency as fans and want them to win now doesn't mean that the Sabres can neglect their future. So
definitely,
it's one of those things. I hope there's more moves that happen this offseason. They better bring in another forward, but we'll see what ends up happening. Has Seattle selected yet?
Bettman's on stage. They're about to announce the person that's going to announce the pick. I did miss Boston's. I think that my favorite part of this draft has been the random people representing these cities. And we had Charles Barkley in Philly, Bailey for San Jose, a lot of random ones. I mean, the Sabres do have the Goo Goo Dolls, which is awesome. So we'll see what happens there, Seattle.
By the way, this whole thing is funny because it's going to end up being a 1-year thing, and they're going to go back to the normal draft, and most likely. And I'm not watching the draft live, but it seems like everybody's saying it's cringeworthy. And we do have Carson here, I think. So let's get.
Also, Carson. Seattle's doing their co-owner. That seems like a cop out to me. But yeah, let's get Carson here real quick. As we are, I think we're fighting to get him in Bunty. There we go.
Yeah, I think so too.
As the Sabres are officially on the clock. Carson, how are you feeling right now? We're through 8 picks this draft. I'll put up the graphic in a little bit. You can talk right through it. How are we feeling? Buffalo Sabres officially on the clock.
Oh, man. Well, first of all, boys, it has been way too long since I've been on a podcast. Been hella busy lately. It feels phenomenal to be back. I'm fired up. I saw you. I was tuning into it a little bit towards the end of work. AJ and Vinny just absolutely killing it. Love to hear the discussion. And you guys have been killing it all day long. But, hey, it's draft day. It's a great opportunity to get better. Maybe trade the pick. Although you can tell by my opinion, they're not trading the pick. They're not trading the pick on the clock, though. Gatesy, we've had our conversations about our guy, Brian Rust. Come on now.
That we have.
I'd love to see him. But, hey, pick is in. I'm curious to see what we got coming up here.
So that was the Sabres target, Jake O'Brien. So
there's a lot of big names on the board still.
I have my guy. I know who I want right now. McQueen. Get McQueen.
A lot of big names still on the board. McQueen's
that jersey would just be incredible.
Yeah, would be phenomenal. Little Tage. So what are you guys feeling, though, as far as the energy right now?
Yeah, I mean, I can hop real quick into that. I mean, I'm going to pull up our realistic picks. They're all still here. We have Roger McQueen from Bunty, that big center. Victor Eklund for you and Vinny Cars, a skilled winger, brother of William Eklund on San Jose. So that, and then Purka defenseman. It's weird because the Sabres have like the 3, options they could go for available here. You take that bigger center, the skilled winger, or that right-handed defenseman. And they're all on the board here. I think, you bring in Purka because I'm thinking back to the Adams presser because a lot of it's rung true so far. Fortin said, you're not going to – you draft based on your prospect pool needs, not your team needs. Granted, the Sabres need – I guess they filled that in the trade for the right-handed defenseman, but I think they want to bring someone else in that front. They're probably going to draft best available, but if I had to guess, they're going to take the defenseman there. But I don't know how you guys are feeling on here as the Sabres
getting
on the clock.
Normally in the loop. He was saying 2 of 3 of the guys he was thinking were O'Brien, Eklund, Purka. Now O'Brien just went 8.
Look at us go.
Yeah, O'Brien just went to Seattle. So you have Eklund and Purka. Eklund, that would be a little bit of a reach because I've seen him a little bit lower on boards than this point. Purka, this seems right around where people have him. I know people are concerned about McQueen, and I think it's his back. But these guys aren't going to be playing, and then they're not going to be playing for you for a couple of years unless you think it's a long-term issue. I guess I could understand the concern there, but
Seattle's a nice draft.
We'll see what happens here.
But with that, we're people rushing in. We're over 9,000 people here. Crossing Swords podcast presented by Batavia Downs Gaming and Hotel. And the ball's in Kevin Adams' court here. He has those three options for what they're going to do. Cars, we have, at least I'm seeing 2.5 minutes here. The Sabres offseason as a whole, big Purka Quinn signing. How are you feeling after, those two moves in short succession going in now, and then as we approach July 1st, start of free agency?
Well, hey, I think I was similar to everybody else. Initially, I woke up to the news. My phone was blowing up 1:30 a.m. Brutal sunburn. I'm already pissed as it is. I see we trade a guy who I'm really high on. I always think he still has the potential to be a 90-plus point getter in the NHL. A guy who I'd love to keep. Seeing him go, he was one of my guys. Was a little bit tough, but I've kind of grown to the trade a little bit. Kasperling, he has potential to be an absolute perfect pairing with Power. He could play with Dahlin if you need him to. And then Josh Doan, I liked him even when he was coming up the ranks through Utah and Tucson. So I think he's going to be a phenomenal middle six guy who can contribute both ways. And he, from what all accounts have been saying about him, he's a grit guy and a guy who you really can have. You can't have enough of those guys. So I just think this is a great opportunity for the team to get better, but they still need to address, I think, that top six forward role, obviously losing out on Purka. So I don't think the job is done. As far as Bo and Byrum is concerned, I know the pick's coming in here soon. I think that's – now they have a little bit of freedom. Since it seems the trade value for him has dropped maybe a little bit. I personally wouldn't mind if he comes back. Like, hey, he was good with Dahlin last year, but other than that, he's a little bit of a liability. So I think it's up to them. I think it's a little bit of a win-win situation, but you have to, one way or another, get better at the forward front, and I think that's what everybody knows right now across the NHL. Yeah,
100%. I mean, that's kind of where the Sabres are at least where I'm looking at now. 50 seconds still on the clock.
Maybe they'll
try to make a move.
They just won't be able to take it.
Yeah, they're going to pass.
Well, if all their players get taken, then they can be like, well,
Yeah, exactly. But no, it is interesting because I think a lot of fans had a thought of what this offseason was going to look like, and it hasn't necessarily gone down those tracks. At least I thought Byrum was for sure gone off the get-go. Yep. I feel like with each passing minute, odds of him staying increased. Pick is in. We'll see what's going. We still got to bring out the Goo Goo Dolls. I mean, that's kind of the highlight of my night is seeing, are they going to be here in person? Are they going to be on a golf course like Shea Weber was for Nashville? I guess we're going to have to find out what that looks like. But let's see. Joseph, good to see you again after our marathon the other night. Yeah, fantasy football looking like that. But
what's your projection? I'm gonna say they're gonna redeem Purka.
Yeah, that's what I think, specifically because the Adams presser came true with Purka. I think it's still true. They're going to draft on their needs for the prospect pool, which is Purka. I think Eklund is the fun pick, but they already have a bunch of guys in that role unless they think this guy's going to be the next incredible player. If that was the case, they probably would have moved up in the draft, in my opinion. And then McQueen big. So Bettman's walking on stage now. Carson, what do you think the Sabres are going to do here?
I think you guys are right. I'm joining you. I think it's going to be Purka, although I'm not a huge fan of him. I think he's a Walmart version of Owen Power, and really kind of a guy who doesn't really play to his full size and potential. Mm-hmm. He could grow into that still. So he's got plenty of potential. Again, kid's only 18, plenty of time for him to grow into that and to change that narrative. So we'll have to see here. I think this is, again, a great opportunity here for a guy to develop in the system. So plenty of time.
Yeah, and I think, too, one of the other defensemen, I think if the Sabres do go on the back end, is Aitchison.
Yep.
He's tall, big. He's also a lefty. I don't know if they really care too much about that because, again, Novikov's the really only guy that can make that jump that's on that prospect side of things. And, gentlemen, I'm seeing some posts here. I will get it on stage so we can all react together. We are looking like a pretty smart podcast because – all night we've been talking what the Sabres can do, or the options. There's hundreds of draft picks available. And Elliot Friedman's not tweeting it yet, so I'm going to have to look elsewhere. But
he just got it out now.
Elliot does.
Yep.
Perfect. Getting it on the screen. Wow. Okay. I'm gonna react first just because I see it. I'm happy. I mean, it's kind of what we expect. It's not, crazy, but here we are. Can I do this all in one go? Here we go. Buffalo Sabres select Radim Purka with the 9th overall right-handed defenseman. Guy we're talking about. How are we feeling? Bunty, if you want to get us going here.
Hey,
I know you're feeling here.
I'm cool with it. This is a guy that was heavily discussed as a possibility for the Sabres. The Sabres, we keep talking about needing defensemen. Now, I know this is down the line when he's going to be ready, but you're getting a lot of size here. The NHL, look at a lot of the good teams. They got a lot of big defensemen. You already got power. Now you're adding another guy with nice size, 6 foot. I believe it's 6'5". We'll see. Everything comes down to development, but this is a player with a lot of potential. Was considered a top 10 pick going into the draft process. Not a reach, right around where he was expected, and hopefully it works out. I'm not going to pretend like I'm an expert and I've watched 5 hours of film on Purka, but it seems like an appropriate selection given what the Sabres' needs are, what they're forecasting down the road, and what this guy could develop into.
Yeah, Bunt, to topple off of what you said, I mean, again, I'm not an expert either, but, the report around him is this is a guy who's going to need a little bit of time to get to the NHL. Bigger guy, like I said before, he just doesn't really play to his size, which, it's whatever. You can learn to play with that. I think power is going to show a lot of people this year that he can take that next step and play without being that bruising punisher at 6'6", 220 pounds. So I think this is a guy that, if you can crisply play the game and be efficient as far as breakouts go and everything like that, and just a smart hockey player, that's something you can definitely get around. Right shot defenseman, again, hard to find. That's a valued position in the NHL. So this is a guy, if you can just develop, I think you're going to have a really, really solid, possible, if he reaches his potential, 35-point two-way defenseman who can, play top 4 minutes for you. So, hey, we'll see how it turns out, but I think this is definitely a pick that we saw coming, and I'm not mad about it. I'll leave it at that. Not thrilled, but, what are you going to do? Not mad about it at all. I think that's a good pick.
Yeah, and I'm happy too because I made a bunch of graphics beforehand, preparing, which are now live. Please, everyone, retweet them and like them. But no, in all seriousness, I like it because, I mean, we talked the Sabres need in that prospect pool. It's in the defenseman. Bunty, you've been talking about it of just you're not going to see these guys right away. Zach Benson was an anomaly, one to play right away, also from his position. But yeah, so now the Sabres are here. They don't trade the pick. What is next if you're Kevin Adams? Bunty, I don't know if you want to get us going.
Yeah.
You have July 1st coming up. You have a couple guys still not signed.
What's going on with Byrum? What is going to happen with him? Obviously, you have in-house stuff. Like with Jack Quinn taken care of today, now you got to get Ryan McLeod taken care of at some point, which I'm sure they will. But it's what happens with Byrum. Are you going to trade him before the end of the month? Because starting July 1st, another team can take him from you, and you will basically get very little in return. So my thought process is it's all about Byrum the rest of the night and probably the next couple of days. I know the second, third, fourth rounds, whatever, you're still selecting important players that can play a pivotal role in the future. But let's be real, you have just as good of a chance of like a third-round pick never seeing the league as you do actually probably a lot better chance of them never seeing the league than you do actually drafting someone that can make an impact around that point. So I don't know what the play is right now with Byrum. I think the Sabres are going to desperately try to trade him, get whatever they can to alleviate the risk. But if he's still a Buffalo Sabre July 1st, you're going to start to have to see what's going to go on. Will somebody offer sheet him? I don't know. That could be a possibility, but you don't see a lot of offer sheets. And then if no one offer sheets him, then you could go into the summer where you just got to find a way to get the guy in a contract at some point. So it's like we discussed earlier. I don't hate the idea of Bo Byrum being on the Sabres on a short-term deal paired with Dahlin and having Kesterling with Power and Bernard Docker with Samuelson. Like, I'm okay with that. Like, that's actually an okay defensive unit. But we had hopes of getting a top six forward. And if Jack Quinn ends up being on the second line for the Sabres going into this season, it's going to feel like another disappointing offseason, even if you believe that Jack Quinn can find another level. And this is what I struggle with. Like, in sports and life, when there's a problem or there is issues, there's normally an equal reaction or a consequence or a sense of urgency that is created as a result. And when the Sabres had 91 points a couple years ago, the initial reaction would be, okay, let's get the player or two that can get them over the top. Okay, no, they went patience. Then they go down to 84 points, and you would think, okay, we just took a step backwards. Our young guys aren't doing the right thing. Yes, there's some things that say they should bounce back, but we should give them moves to help them bounce back. And all you did was Zucker and McLeod, two good moves, but not the type of moves that alter your franchise. If they go back down now to 78 points and they don't swing for something, and I know swinging for something isn't always like the best move, but if you don't show that sense of urgency, like, what are you telling your fans at this point? And then on top of that, do you even care about your fans at that point? And the fact that we're hearing things like, well, even if the Sabres miss the playoffs this year, Kevin Adams probably will have another role in the organization at some point. You really have to wonder, does Kevin Adams even feel the pain? Because if he's safe regardless, well, what does he have to lose? He just has to make sure the owner is happy. Lindy Ruff, he's getting older. Does he have anything to lose? He's not in this for the next 10 years. He's in this for trying to do something now. So then you have Kekalainen. Maybe he's the future GM in waiting. But the thing I've struggled so much is, like, a normal organization, there would have been consequences for all this stuff. And it felt like there was finally the right recipe of things happening for the Sabres to have a sense of urgency. And I've seen a little bit of it, but I don't know if it's fully there. And if Byrum's still on the team, if they don't make a swing at some free agents, I'm really going to question if they do have this all-in mentality to win games. And I know people will say, well, Mike, isn't it obvious you should have been thinking this for like the last decade? They took shots during the first 10 years of the drought. They went after guys like Evander Kane and Ryan O'Reilly when they were hot commodities. They tried to get Ryan Sutter and Zach Parise to sign with the Sabres. They chose the Wild instead. They tanked for Eichel and Reinhart. They went after Billy Leno and Christian Ehrhoff. And they even tried to get Taylor Hall to save things before it completely fell apart with Eichel and Reinhart. So I guess the thing I don't get is if you were trying your hardest for a decade, why isn't there that greater sense right now? And all we ever hear about is Terry Pegula is involved in the decision making. An owner that cares enough to be involved, how is he just sitting there not showing more urgency? It's almost like he cares, but he's not willing to do what it takes. Like, and I get it. The Sabres lose a lot of money. They don't make him his billions and billions that he has. What is the mindset, and why is there this disconnect?
Yeah, your boy Roger McQueen gone. So one pick there. But I do want to circle back real quick to a couple comments. Just in terms of this pick, the reason the Sabres made this pick is it doesn't matter who they're taking at this spot. They're not going to make that jump at the NHL. And the Sabres do need that help defensively in that future. You say 4 or 5 years development. I mean, at that point, you're going to be going through the tail end of your Dahlin and Power contract. That's going to be getting towards the end there. Who knows what's going on in St. Louis at that point? Like, that's the time they can make that jump up. You're drafting for the future, which at that point is there. Do they try to get to 11? I mean, I know Pittsburgh was trying to move up. I don't know what they're going to happen here. I doubt the Sabres the Sabres should not get back in this first round. And then, Cars, who are you taking at pick 9 there? Are you happy with this pick, or how are you feeling?
That's a good question. I mean, again, I'm a big Eklund guy. I would have had McQueen over Eklund, or Murka as well. So, I mean, that's a start. Aitchison, I love his game. I mean, just an absolute bruiser on the back end, with really, really solid athleticism. So, I mean, it was either, to me, it's a three-headed race between those three, between McQueen, Eklund, and then Aitchison. So, hey, I mean, if coming into this, they said they had 5 to 6 guys. I was hoping maybe Hagens would fall, or a guy like that, maybe Martone, and that didn't happen, which it shouldn't have. I mean, teams weren't dumb enough to overthink that. Those are some of the best guys in the draft, as obviously shown. So I think, hey, it's a fine pick. You know, you could go worse, right? So that's a great question. I appreciate the question. If I had to go though, I'd say I'd probably go Roger McQueen there. I think I'd probably go him or Eklund, one of the two.
Oh shit! There we go. Sorry, Carv.
Good.
Yeah, no more. So we got more rumors coming in. I mean, 7-9 teams in Byrum. Who knows if a deal is made tonight? I mean, Bunty, we only have a couple more days till July 1st.
Your belly is like somewhere between 7 and 9 teams, and I'm on Byrum. So, like, you know what? You know why I laugh about this? So, like, first of all, Sierra Valley,
0 and 31 teams want it right now.
And if you say everything, you're bound to get it right, because if you list every rumor in the history of the world, like, okay, you're going to get something right. If 7 to 9 teams are in on Byrum, then how are the Sabres getting lowballed? Is every single team like, oh, we'll just give you a second or third round pick? Like, when you have a bidding war or teams bidding against each other, that increases the value. So something that is getting reported is not accurate. If you have 7 to 9 teams all lowballing the Sabres at once, they just think that Kevin Adams is a joke then at that point. Yeah. And that's what Sabres fans would love to believe. But if Adams has to be engaging with these teams in order for them to actually think they're in the conversation. So something isn't lining up. Now, who's leaking that? Is that a team? Is that the Sabres leaking it because they're not liking the offers and they're trying to get a little bit more? Is that another team that is in on Byrum right now? Like, probably not. What would they have to benefit by saying that the Sabres aren't getting anything? So to me, that kind of seems like a Sabres little, like, we're not getting enough. Don't get mad at us for not trading him tonight. Like, we're hoping it gets a little bit more. But yeah, it's just very strange that on one end you're hearing 7 to 9 teams, and then on the other end you're hearing the Sabres aren't getting good offers. So that it would seem like technically both could be true, but I'm betting it's not. Something is off with one of those.
Well, this is the misinformation Kevin's talking about, right? But don't worry, Matthias Samuelsson will be a Sabre in the fall of 2025. So, I mean, hey, like, whatever happens with Bo, I think chances are he still probably gets traded. But if he's back, I mean, to me, it's not the end of the world. He's a good player when he's with the right people. So they just have to do something at forward. Like, you can't just lose JJ Purka and for 2 guys who you hope step up, which seems to have been the strategy the past few years, where we hope this guy takes the next level. So I don't know. It's tough. There's going to be forwards out there for them to take a run at. You know, Ehlers, Marner's probably out of the question, but still, like,
Mike, what's the question? We'll respond to it. I didn't see the question here.
I'm looking.
Mike Will's just going off in the chat right now.
Like, we definitely appreciate the engagement, but if you type in
everybody Clearview,
and I will give my best attempt at answering it.
Yeah. That's an interesting point for the Sabres of, Carson, I know what you're saying, of, like, we all know they have to fill that top 6 spot, because if they don't, I mean, does that solidify Jack Quinn as your second line winger if they don't bring in anyone else right now? Or you think that's going to be through free agency? Because where else do you think the Sabres can get value in their top 6 outside of Bo and Byrum right now? And if, Byrum's still here, is there any way that they can add to their top 6 with the pieces that they have right now, you think?
Well, they definitely have the pieces, right? Like, the prospects are so there. You got Hellenius, you got Roseanne, you got Osland, you got Wahlberg. Like, that's just to name off the top guys. Like even after that, you got guys like Neuchab, and the list goes on, right? So they have the ability to get a guy. It's just they're in a weird spot. I forgot exactly who brought this up, but they made a good point. It was a few weeks ago on a podcast that I was listening to. Like the teams of the Sabres are trying to make trades with, or hockey like trades 1-for-1, where you get a guy who's NHL ready for another guy, and there's really two separate organizations in the league. You got your sellers who are just giving guys off for picks, and the Sabres really haven't just done that. And then you also got your buyers who are the good teams, but they're not going to give anything up. So when they're in that weird spot where they're, you're right in the middle, and there's really only like 3 to 4 other teams. So it's a tough thing to do. Like if they don't get rid of Byrum, they're going to have to shell out some money, which, who knows how that's going to work out considering their cap situation these past few years. And it's not, I do think Jack Quinn could play on the second line. Like he's coming off a really, really bad year.
Getting paid to it.
That second half of the year, he looked like himself a little bit. It's not ideal if he's your second line winger, right? But like, it's not to say that he can't put up 60 points, 70 points next year. But you have to bring a guy in. You have to bring somebody in. If you don't, you're setting yourself up for.
Here's the thing.
This
is the tough spot. Jack Quinn doesn't fit with what they currently have on their third line. Most likely. I guess you could put him on the third line. But where Jack Quinn would fit in on a team is a second line player. But we don't want him on the second line because he hasn't proven to deserve being on the second line. But we're also talking about a much different second line than what we've seen in recent years. We no longer have a Dylan Cousins on this team. JJ Purka is gone. So how do you want to see the lines is a big question. If you have Norris, Thompson, is Benson on the first line with them? Is Kulik on the second line? Or do you have Norris on the second line with Tuck, and do you throw Quinn there? Do you have Kulik on the first line with Thompson and throw somebody else with them? Like there's a lot of different things that they can do. The only thing that seems like it should be a consistent thing is that you should have McLeod and Zucker on the third line most likely. And then even then, is Greenway the third line with them? Does Doan have a chance to be a third line guy with them? Or is Doan on your fourth line with Krebs and Malenstein? The way I look at it, this got me into the trouble last year where I got too high on the team and I picked them to make the playoffs. I still feel like an idiot for that. You look at the lines, you look at the open spots on this team. A lot of people are going to say, well, there's a lot of holes on this team. I don't really see a lot of avenues for incoming players to fit. If you already know that you have a combination of Lafferty, Malenstein, Krebs, Doan, and you have Greenway, that's 5 players that could take up three spots on your fourth line. Well, you already know you have Zucker and McLeod, so those are probably your third line. So one of those 5 guys that I had for the fourth line can be in your third line. And then with Tuck, Thompson, Norris, Kulik, Benson, Quinn, you don't want to drop those guys to that level. So really, Quinn becomes interesting. And I guess if you brought in another veteran, you could drop Quinn to the third line with McLeod and Zucker. But it's weird to say this about a bad team, but I don't know where all the room is for these guys. It's almost the same way defensively right now. Unless you trade Byrum, you have your top 6 probably set. And even goalie, it's okay, you want to upgrade on Devin Levi, but you already have your starting goalie set. There really isn't a ton that they can do unless they want to shake up this entire roster and just be fire sale. Here, take this, take that. And everybody's trying to buy right now. So as you said, Carson Hayek, not Carson Gatesy, if teams are lowballing,
Carsons and Sabres
how are you gonna radically shake up your team properly if teams are lowballing you in the first place? So, and then people don't want to sign extensions for you. So this is where the Dobson thing was interesting to me. So you always hear about the Sabres are on everybody's no trade list. Well, you got another problem. you might not be on a no trade list for a 24, 25-year-old, but they tell you they're not going to sign an extension with you. Then you can't give up a Purka for them anyway, because why are you going to give up Purka for some guy that doesn't want to sign with you beyond a year or two? So
yeah,
they're screwed even beyond the no trade clause. In some of it's their own creation, but God,
a lot of log jams.
A horrible situation to be in.
Yeah, there's log jams of their own issues of, I think we're seeing it now. They're moving up from Cousins, Purka. They're going to start alleviating that and not just believing in their guys through and through till the end of time. And I think we are seeing that. Joseph, good to see you back. Hopefully you're having fun. I feel like I've got to see a comment from you that elicits fun. I hope you're having a good night. And yeah, I mean, exactly this. We're a lot of banking on guys to take that step. And I think the Sabres are paying that price, especially in that they took that gamble on UPL Levi being, that future. This has to be the last year of that before they're out of this, weird gray area of will they, won't they, who's going to take the reins. And we might even see this year bringing in someone else to take that on, but we will, we'll figure it out. Kevin Weeks is going crazy on Twitter. Who knows what he's up to? Shout out Joseph. It's Friday night. TGIF, fellas. We've been going live over 2 hours. Over 12,000 people have stopped in for the Crossing Swords podcast presented by Batavia Downs Gaming Hotel, Draft Extravaganza. And I guess, I don't know how you guys are feeling, but if you want to start wrapping things up, just kind of overall how you're feeling right now. Today is July 27th, a couple more days to the 1st. I would say a week ago, if I told you a week ago, this is exactly what the Sabres would do, how would you feel? And what do you think fans should expect in these next couple days?
I'll let you go first, Carson.
Well, I'd say this right now.
Shout out Micah.
Jake, you're such a beauty, man. Anyway, first things first, I'm really, really, I don't know, I'd say uneasy. I'm uneasy. Like, I don't know how to feel because you have things that are still in the process, you hope, right? Like, you hope they can go out. Like, there has to be more. So it's kind of irresponsible almost, I'd say, to say kind of where we can see this project because we've seen them kind of make aggressive moves before, like the Cousins trade at the deadline. And then we've also seen them just go mute. So it's tough to gauge because you hear all the interest and everything like that. So I'm just really, really kind of uneasy until I see what happens as far as the forward front goes. I'm going to kind of feel like that. But July 1st is going to be a crucial date because if they can't, find a trade match for Bo and Byrum that they like for a forward, man, does your window of error become so much slimmer because who is going to want to come here, for a reasonable price at that forward group for a top six forward? It's going to become extremely difficult. And that's really when you start to become pretty nervous. It's disappointing because you kind of, it shouldn't be like that, right? Like the hole is just so deep. They keep digging it. Like if Tuck goes, man, oh man, as far as him not wanting an extension, it could get really, really ugly. And it's just because they've done it so many ways. We've had this conversation before on how many times that they just lose, and it's just different ways too. So it's difficult. Like I could so see this team, like they're not that far away as far as playoffs are concerned. Like I feel like this team could still make the playoffs next year. It's just you get a top six forward, and we're talking. If you don't, that could be tough. The Gatesy glaze is just.
I don't know what's going on with OTD, but we'll figure that out after.
You just I love OTD, but let's lay off Gatesy. I love Gatesy, love Carson.
Yeah, shout out that guy.
I'm in the middle of a Carson sandwich right now.
So new podcast.
Let's lay off Gatesy a little bit. He's a star of the show, so we appreciate it.
I'm just pushing the buttons behind the scenes. Before Bunty, we get to you on looking at this future. Intern Vinny sent a text. I believe Vinny everything he says. He says allegedly Murka's name translates from Czech to English, meaning death. So I mean,
a picture of Murka. He looks so. Like
I'll pull it up on here because I haven't seen it yet.
Find it on Twitter and pull it up. Joe Marino quote tweeted it, and we need this picture up here because
is he death?
Dude, it's
Is
bad.
it the one him at the mic?
Yes, and like
no.
maybe he's just like staring into something, but like that looks depressing. That's a guy that's like my NHL career is already a disaster.
Oh my, yeah. Let me here. I got this real quick. Sorry, StreamYard's getting to me. I almost lost it. This is
brutal. That's brutal.
Welcome to the NHL. You just got drafted by the Buffalo Sabres. What are your thoughts?
Wow.
Oh God, I feel bad for him.
I mean, you can't just not laugh at that.
That's a dude like contemplating like his life right there.
Yeah. But I mean, Spin Zone, his name does translate allegedly to death. So I mean, if I have a draft board, that's my number one reason to take him is strictly because of that. So I'm going to value that over this 1,000-yard stare that I'm seeing right now out of him. But Bunty, as we start to wrap things up here, how you feeling through today? We're probably not going to. Who knows if we see him any more action? Kevin Adams. I mean, last trade was at like 11 o'clock at night. So yeah, how are you feeling now? Do you think what's the future look like?
Nothing that happened today has changed my opinion on anything.
Yep, agreed.
I'm waiting for the Byrum trade. If that happens, if Byrum doesn't get traded, then it's going to feel like a little bit of a lackluster offseason. But as I said earlier, if they keep Byrum, it's a good defense core as long as they pair him with Dahlin. This is what I said earlier. This is the part I'm going to struggle with.
Yeah.
When you are a team that's gone from 91 to 84 to 78 points, it feels like you have to do something to change things. And it feels, as a fan, frustrating seeing what they've done to change the roster because we have been on the lesser side of a lot of moves in recent times. When you give up Purka, you're expecting a haul back. And I like Kesserling and I like Doan, but you gave up the best part of the deal. And when you don't know necessarily what you're going to get back for Bo Byrum and you look at your forward room, it's a tough situation because normally in the past you'd say, well, we can go get someone in free agency, but let's be real. How are the Sabres going to convince most solid free agents to come to Buffalo and join a team on a 14-year playoff drought? It's a tough sell. So what I struggle with is how are they going to get this team to where I feel going into the season, not only that they're good enough to make the playoffs, but they will make the playoffs. And that's why I get upset with the Sabres because I can find ways of saying, well, if they buy into Lindy's system, if they get the right culture guys, that they're really not that far away. And I truly do believe that. I believe that if they have the buy-in, that they could be good enough to make a leap like Montreal or Ottawa last year. But come on, management, give them a few guys to actually make fans believe it and not have to talk themselves into that. Like, yeah, they could take that next step, but you're going into another season basically. You're not showing that you believe in it. You're showing that you're just hoping to contend for one of the final spots. Why not make it definitive? Why not make a bold move? That's the thing I struggle with. Your team has been so bad for so long. Why not just go for it? If you sign somebody or you make a big trade and it bites you in the face, who cares? Like, seriously, who cares? You would have already, at least you show that you have a pulse. And Gatesy,
it's 1,000 degrees in my apartment right now, and some smart guy decided to put on a long sleeve shirt for the draft extravaganza. So yeah, sweat and hair's getting.
Gatesy, that was me earlier today, and to be fair, OTD said that I was looking rough during the Purka trade.
I'll take all about the salad then. I won't take it rough.
Don't worry, it's not just you. We're all taking shots here.
Also, I'll take it. OTD send some more. I mean, Rochester's good, so at least we have Rochester. But yeah, finish up your thoughts here, Bunty.
It's tough because it's like I get the small market stuff, I get the tax stuff, I get the no trade clauses. I understand that we are in a tough spot, horrible franchise a lot of losing. But like at some point, you got to show that like you're willing to overcome it, or at least try to overcome it. It's almost like the Sabres have just accepted, yeah, we suck. Like our team is awful. We can't go after good free agents because they won't come here. We're not trading for anybody because they won't come here. Nobody will sign an extension. Well, maybe you just go out and overpay somebody. Give somebody, if you see an $8 million player, maybe give them $11 million. Show them, you know what?
Taylor Hall again.
Like, we want to change it. You have a rising cap. You don't spend within $5 million of the cap anyway. What's going to kill you if you overspend by $4 million to get a guy? And then if it backfires in your face, whatever. At least you showed your fans that you somewhat cared for a period of time. Like, that's the part I don't get. For all of the Sabres history, they had a bunch of owners that had no money or were criminals or didn't care about the team. I mean, that's literally like the history of the Sabres. You had no money with the Knoxes for when NHL was getting bigger. You had a criminal in the Regases. Then you had Golisano, who was a billionaire but didn't care about hockey. And then you finally get the one guy that like had a passion for the team, loved them, was a fan, had unlimited amounts of cash.
Did so much for Penn State hockey too.
And somewhere along the line, it's tough because you don't want to make assumptions. Like obviously, horrible things happened to Kim, and he tried a lot of different things. He tried tanking. He tried spending money. He tried making trades. He got burned on Botterill. Got burned, in his opinion, probably on Eichel and Reinhart. And a lot of things have gone the wrong way. And at the same time, the Bills are winning all these games. Maybe it could be as simple as maybe he feels like he doesn't need to care about the Sabres because he brought Buffalo a Super Bowl contending football team, and just that's his priority. But like you look at what he did with Penn State. Penn State, he invested nearly $100 million to start a D1 hockey team, build them a program. They go to the Frozen Four this year, and guess what? They're getting the number one. They're getting some of the top prospects from junior hockey in Canada to go to Penn State. So Pegula's investment in Penn State has turned them into one of the premier hockey programs in college hockey. Mm-hmm. You have the Bandits that have won 3 straight championships. I know it's NLL, but they win championships. You have the Bills competing for AFC championships every year. Like, in a way, it's kind of ironic because almost everything that Pegula is touching in the sports world is successful except for the Sabres. And maybe he just has become complacent and just doesn't care because he's like, you know what? I've tried everything. What do you want me to do? But he still has decision-making power. He still tells people what. So the only thing I can really get my head around is that Penn State, that's a legacy school for you. You've built a legacy by basically starting and building the foundation of their hockey program. The Bills, you're to some a hero for saving them and bringing in Josh Allen, McDermott, and Bean. And you're making money there, a lot of money. And then the Sabres, you're not making money. The fan base hates you. Your team sucks. You've tried everything. Is it possible he's just like, I tried and like, whatever, like I'm losing money. Like it is Josh what Allen. It is. And that's the sad thing because I want to believe that he doesn't actually feel that way, but his actions on how he runs the team show that that is how he feels.
But what if we get 2 jumbotrons this year? Will that change?
Like, that's the other thing too. Like they're going to make renovations to this arena soon.
We should probably get the updated logo and as well around the concourse.
You think once they make renovations, they're going to want to sell tickets to the arena. Like, yes. But we haven't even heard information about renovations. Like that's the funny thing. You're hearing Nashville talk about $700 million renovations.
Yeah.
You're hearing all these other NHL teams with their renovations. The Sabres put in a roof and a video board, and we don't even know what else they have planned. I'll say this: if they eventually put money into the arena, you might as well try to win at that point because there's no point putting $200+ million if you're just going to sell 14,000 tickets a night and that's it. You might as well try to win hockey games. That's the only thing I question. I know people say he's a billionaire. He shouldn't care about making or losing money on the Sabres. I guarantee you that plays a role in his decision-making. And the only thing I would question him is why? Like, why is that making such an impact on your decision-making with a team when you are bringing in money from other ways. And the only answer I can say back to that is billionaires don't get rich by being wasteful with their money. And he treats it as an investment. And if he truly looks at it as the Sabres don't make me money, I'm not investing money, well, then that's really sad because the Sabres are just going to suck until they luckily one day figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, basically how the Bills got there, bad. And then you got that turnaround. And then, especially from the fan perspective, Bills fans were always diehard, but I remember growing up, it was always Russell Salvatore buying tickets, to get the sellout or, whatever it was to keep the team afloat. Because it was obvious, everyone knows bad for a long time. Sabres hopefully should be the same thing. They get that success. Fans come back. 14,000 isn't a great night in the KeyBank Center anymore. Go from there. But Karsh, do you have any other final thoughts here before we wrap up? Over 13,000 people have stopped in tonight. Thank you to everyone. Watch the Cross Swords podcast presented by Batavia Downs Gaming and Hotel.
I'll just kind of leave it at this. The one thing, I don't know, I'm not sure if you guys touched on this, but it's a little off topic, and I don't want to start a whole other conversation, but hopefully I can get it across here. So the Adams press conference the other day, I don't think it accomplished much. First of all, he said a few things that probably weren't necessarily like the correct thing to say, right? Whether it's the Purka thing or then saying,
just a few, Carson,
misinformation, and then brings up Samuelson and all that nonsense. So, but at the same time, people got to relax a little bit with this because everything this guy says now, and I understand that the results, earn you the respect, and he hasn't had any results as a GM. Yet here he comes out confident, but are you going to want your GM to come out all timid in a press conference? I don't think so. I think people are up in arms about certain things that are completely overblown. And it's just, again, I'm a guy who's going to defend Adams because I do think he's playing with an arm behind his back and everything like that. But, and of course he has to be better, right? The team's results haven't been there. It's just, I think the fan base is until they become, a successful team and they start winning, people are going to be like that. But it's just the toxicity is so back. I remember 2 years ago, after the 91-point season, it was nice to be a Sabres fan for once. It was refreshing. Like we actually have a chance. And it's just gone right back to the toxic fan base that it's been for majority of the drought. And it's really, really tough because, the guy will say one thing and it's blown out of proportion and fan base is up in arms and it's just always negative. So it's tough. I mean, that frustrated me a little bit just to see how negative things were, along with, some of the fake reports that have come out with Cervelli saying, 2 first-round picks, 2 roster players. None of that's true. I mean, there's no way. There's no way that him as a GM could possibly do that. And, I mean, he's being compared to a terrorist. It's just it's getting ridiculous. It's getting out of hand, So it's just frustrating. So hopefully, they make a few moves here for, top 6 forward. Byrum might be off the team. So a lot of offseason to go. I mean, we're barely just starting. We're not even in a free agency yet, let alone the re-sign phase. So, hopefully it works out. They make a move for a big splash a week from now. Sabres fans are going to be a little bit more quiet. So I think the only way to silence that right now is to go out there and make a nice move. And as Bunt said, which I totally agree with, if you're going to miss, you better go down swinging. So I'll leave it at that.
But do you have any final more thoughts before I close up shop here?
No, just feeling another good episode. We've been killing it the last couple nights with our Sabres content, almost 30,000 combined the last 2 shows. So that shows there still is people that care about this team.
Hell yeah.
Hopefully that gets passed on to ownership eventually. But there's still a lot that needs to happen this offseason. And yes. I'm going to wait before I have a full opinion until I know how this all plays out. If I find out in a couple days that Bo Byrum is traded and they got a top 6 forward in return, I'm going to look back and I'll be like, you know what? This actually might be an okay unit. Maybe they're ready to make a little bit of a leap. But there's a lot of proving that they have to do to me at this point. And I'm definitely on the more positive side than most Sabres fans. But my thought process going forward is prove it before I believe it. Mm-hmm. And if I'm the Sabres, I'm not giving a crap about what what people are saying on the outside right now.
Mm-hmm.
Get the room, do things the right way, build the right culture, and hope for better results. At the end of the season, I know games at the end of the year don't carry over necessarily into the next season, but
they do with a team like this, I think.
It matter more than what we say. They still are NHL games. They still have points on the line, and players are still playing for themselves, their tape, their careers.
Mm-hmm.
Do I think the Sabres are as good as what that run was at the end of last year? No. But I do think there was something during that run that showed a different side of them. What did you see a little bit more during that? Well, for one, you had better goaltending. The first time in forever, you had good goaltending. So you saw if you have good goaltending, the Sabres can win some of these close games. Number two, you saw a little bit better support for teammates. When someone get hit, there was a response. There was even sometimes there would be weak little things in front of the net they were responding to. Number three, they were adding that little bit of grittiness to being able to close a game. Games that they were losing earlier in the year, maybe they got a good stop, a big save at a big moment, or they stepped up and they back-checked at a proper situation. There was a little bit better, smarter hockey. And I know some of the metrics were like, oh, well, they got lucky, like whatever. Like, that's going to happen. Hockey, sometimes the team that's not as good wins some games. Yeah. That's how it goes. I'm sure if you had metrics for the 1998-99 Sabres, they would say that team shouldn't have even won a playoff series, and yet they were going to the Eastern Conference Finals. I just hope that what they're doing is showing that we're no longer the kid team.
Yep.
Maybe we're not adult. Maybe we're not like the grown-up, grown men team, but let's not be like the kiddie table anymore.
No more kids lying.
Let's be at the adult table, and hopefully having a more mature group will lead to better hockey. Because let's be real, where's the youth right now besides Benson and Kulik? They're those are the two guys where you're really young, unseasoned. But Benson's already playing a game that is a mature style of hockey, and
you worked at Carnival for 20 years.
I just have this gut feeling that Purka and Cousins being gone is going to change the vibe inside the locker room and on the ice. I feel like those were vibe-changing moves where Adams would probably never admit this because I bet you he wanted to keep Purka, not on a long term, but on a bridge. But those are some of those people laugh at me and they'll say I'm just coping. Addition by subtraction. These are not the people we want playing in Buffalo.
Yeah, especially, you play in any hockey team, any sport in general. You don't know what's going on in a locker room once you're in it. So you have to believe that, the decisions being made are for a reason that's, going to help the team. And there's more that goes into results in the win column than just on the ice. A lot of it comes off the ice as well, especially with a young team like this. Young guys, you're trying to build a culture that's, trying to end a 14-year playoff drought. I think a lot of it we're going to find out in these next couple of days. Obviously, the big spotlight on Bo and Byrum here. But the Sabres draft Raheem Purka. Brian, thanks for stopping in. Yeah, you look pissed. Incredible photo. I can't wait to use that throughout the course here. That's a terrible omen, I think, to start this, but we're going to look by because his name means death, and that's all I'm going to care about at the end of the day here. Mr. Scotch, thanks for the kind words. Joseph, always an honor and pleasure. Bunty, we're missing our Clearview brethren from the other night. But gentlemen, thank you for stopping here today, spending your night. Bunty, 2.5 hours yet again. I think I've spent more time with you in these past 2 days than I've talked to my mom on the phone in the past month. So I should probably shoot her a call. She just had to ride for Roswell tomorrow. So shout out mom on that front. But gentlemen, thank you so much. Thank you to the over 13,000 people that stopped in tonight to watch us. Watch what the future of the Buffalo Sabres looks like. Talk about it ourselves. The support we've gotten the past couple of days has been great. We have a big season planned ahead. And this is in the Crossing Swords podcast presented by Batavia Downs Gaming Hotel. Remember, Trainwreck Sports on Etsy. Use code CSPOD, CSPOD, 10% off. Help us out as well. Josh, always an honor, pleasure. You're a trooper sticking through all of this. Sunrise could never. And gentlemen, let's have a fun off season.
Let's go.